Oh, there you are. Here I am in the studio. It's a Friday. Friday is here. Fiadaba. And I know the Friday borns are very excited because it's your day. So am I, though I wasn't born on a Friday. But this is how I'd like to welcome you aboard the AM show. Wezo Akwaba. Well, here's what you can expect. You know to expect nothing but the best, but I'll be serving you the news shortly, followed by the news review. And some of those joining us, we have Professor Isaac Bwedi. He's Dean of Accounting and Finance at the UPSA. We have Carmen Krumah-Botio, General Secretary of the CPP. Andrew Mussa Dankwah is a legal practitioner and member of the Movement for Change. All of them will be joining us this morning, right here on the AM show. And that will be followed by sports with Muftau Nabila Abdullahi. He'll be serving us prime take, having those scintillating conversations with people who matter in the realm of sports. And after that, of course, I'll be serving you, you know what, my blunt thoughts. I'll be sharing with you my thoughts, lessons, key takeaways from election 2024. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. But when we hit our big stories, exit polls indicate that the economy and jobs remain key issues that triggered a nationwide sweep for the National Democratic Congress in an election that appeared too close to call, but has now left some pollsters literally scratching their heads, relooking their methodologies, and recalculating and recalibrating their fractions. Well, this morning, we'll delve into the details of the exit polls with a man who put his head on the chopping board with some wild predictions of the election 2024 results, but has come out unscathed. Unscathed. We'll be having a conversation with him. Whom? That's a secret I'm holding to my chest for now. Then also, there were concerns about voting in Boku, but guess what? There was a peaceful election in that volatile part of the country. We're so happy that everything went peacefully, and we'll be sharing some details with you on that. But as always, what is the show without you? We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts with us. Let us know what's on your mind via the live stream. Be respectful as you send in your messages. And if you do call, just stick to the point, stay away from your gadget, and let's know what's on your mind. But on that note, let's settle for the news up next. Good to have your company. Let's get into the news now. In our first story, the Electoral Commission has postponed the declaration of the Nsawam Edwajiri parliamentary election result to this morning. Now, this follows long disagreements between the contesting parties over the eligibility of some pink sheets. My colleague, James Aveji, has details of how things unfolded at the National Police Training School, Tessano, where the Eastern Regional Recollation had to be moved to.
For 17 long hours, the Electoral Commission has been recollating the election result for Nsawam Edwajiri, Akwetia, Suhum, and Fantiakwa North constituencies. 3 of the constituencies have been resolved, but of course, not without chaotic scenes.
Leave our section. With due respect, you are not part of us. You are not part of us. You are not supposed to be here. Go away. Go away.
After the NPP won Akwetia and Fantiakwa North constituencies in the early hours of Thursday, it took the EC returning officer 12 more hours to declare the Suhum constituency results at 9 p.m. and under heavy police protection.
I hereby declare Frank Asiedu Bakwen as MP-elect for Suhum constituency 2024 election.
Here's Majority Leader Alexander Penyumakin's reaction to a third victory.
We thank God that when security was properly provided and the EC was firm, we've all seen transparently what we have achieved.
But the NDC's Peter Boama Otokuno says they will not accept the results of Akwetia.
When she called that they should stop, they had finished and they claimed they have declared. And that results declaration is illegal, it's unfounded, it's non-existent, and so the Akwetia is still outstanding.
It's past 1 a.m. here at the Collation Center. The EC, together with the political parties, are still divided on whether to accept the results from over 80 polling stations in the Nsawam Edwejiri constituency, which have some errors. Frank Anodompre, who is the MP and candidate in the election, is furious but firm he will win the seat.
See, I see something happening. People have pin sheet and yet they hold on to it and say, I don't have, just to prolong the declaration of the result. This is most unfortunate. I have won this election. Why are they dragging the matter? What is this?
After the long wait, the EC has postponed its final decision on Nsawam Edwejiri to 6 a.m. Friday morning. James Savage, Police Training School, Accra.
Now, President-elect John Dramani Mahama has assured Ghanaians that his incoming administration will not misuse the overwhelming majority secured by the National Democratic Congress in the just-ended elections. Speaking during the courtesy call by the National Chief Imam, he promised to consult the New Patriotic Party at every step, stating that he was committed to democratic governance. He dismissed the Supreme Leader tag attributed to him after the massive victory by the NDC, insisting he would govern as a Democrat.
I wish to assure my father and our fathers that we're not going to misuse the majority we have in Parliament. Even though we have a huge majority, more than 2/3, we're not going to misuse it. We're going to consult with the minority at every stage. And make sure that we do things by consensus instead of railroading everybody. Everybody knows that I'm a typical diplomat and a Democrat. And so I believe in jaw, I believe in consensus building, and I believe in democracy. I've heard some people call me Supreme Leader. I'm not Supreme Leader. I'm going to continue to work the way I've always been as a Democrat, and we'll continue to consult with our colleagues who are in the NPP. We can only move this country together if all of us work to move it together. No one single political party can turn the fortunes of Ghana without the cooperation of everybody else. So I can assure you that we'll work together. We'll continue to consult you. I'm your son, and you all have been very gracious with advice and good counsel. I've enjoyed working with all of you over the years, and nothing is going to change. My doors will be open at any time that any of our leaders, my fathers, want to see me. The door will readily be open.
Now, life is slowly bouncing back in the Ashanti regional city of Kumasi after the outcome of the December 7th general election. The mood remains mixed depending on the respondents' political affiliation. But residents generally have their hopes high in the John Mahama administration, especially in terms of employment creation, the implementation of the 24-hour economy, and Nkokon-Kete policies. Clinton Yabwa gauged the mood on the streets of Kumasi and filed this report.
Days after the 7th December elections, things are slowly returning to normal. Just right behind me is a trotro station with cars buzzing with noise in my ears. This is to indicate how back they are to their daily routine. Markets are opened, shops are opened, and street hawkers are also back on the streets. But the air in the space are filled with mixed emotions. So let's just get into conversations with others. What do you think generally of the outcome of the elections?
I
am so happy. I feel less burdened, and for this victory, I drink to express the joy.
Na abatwa wenu blame ni nyina yedema Nana Akufo-Addo na yede Nana Akufo-Addo ase se abra Nana Akufo-Addo edia yede Akufo-Addo ase eda yeto aba Friday na Akufo-Addo atupatru drivers fo adodo omo ha nyina omanto aba no drivers fo omo ha oyi omo just ye say 60% obi so nkoto ade na wase basa because one obedi in 80s edi akọ to within 80 years na akọ no baomia ebeba nti eye de yo se die nti o enema wodi na brosa.
What people think generally about the results of the 7th December elections certainly will not change life in the next 4 years. However, they shared their expectation of the coming government.
Until me the omo baye be favor me say kwan a omo baye no say so am about omo ye go sulu ofa ha omo block kwan na ba bia anko until me de ne say aban na ba no contractors no de kwan na ba bia omo de ama omo so omo ye no hwe no omo nye na ye daba fo no ye ho nto ye
nyame na si hene ama me NPP ni papa ba ye still nyame na si hene nti nyame na yi na ma ya ye pe.
I am expecting the John Mahama will not remove yet to be absorbed nurses and replace us with NDC fanatics.
Yeah, because I'm afraid I go various hospitals na go ejuma. But I go and say, matete say, onche mudo, but obefa na nkofo. Ti ofa na nkofo ni de, ebe ma ye be wo fi. Ti na da roma, o de enunku enti, me se onye we mai.
From Kumasi in the Ashanti region, my name is Clinton Yeboah, reporting for Joy News.
Now, the Western region is battling a severe cholera outbreak with over 800 suspected cases and more than 10 deaths reported so far. The Sekondi, Takoradi and Efia Kwesimintim areas remain the hardest hit, accounting for 95% of cases. Health authorities have implemented strict measures, including a ban on vegetable sales by food vendors to curb the spread. As efforts intensify to combat the outbreak, our reporter Natalia Kwanza brings us a detailed account of the challenges, interventions, and urgent calls for support.
Health authorities attribute the outbreak to contaminated vegetables and poor sanitary conditions. In response, the Western Region Coordinating Council has banned the sale of vegetables by food vendors, warning violators of prosecution under the Public Act 2012 Act 851.
I survive by selling vegetables, so it will affect me a lot, but I cannot say because it will affect me, I should allow people to get cholera from vegetables. So we can't do anything about it.
The outbreak has overwhelmed health facilities in the region. At the Kwesimintim Hospital, initially ill-equipped to handle the crisis, medical staff had to convert waiting areas into wards for cholera patients. Medical superintendent at the Kwesimintim Hospital, Dr. Simon Osei-Frimpong, shares his experience.
About a month now, we started seeing the cases. In fact, we call it index case, meaning the first case we saw in the hospital. We weren't even aware it was cholera. And the person came very late. So the person spent less than 24 hours here. And sorry, we lost the person. So from that time, we had to train our staff, do everything possible to take care of the rest. And since then, we've had quite a number, I've referred to the figures, quite a number. We have average of 15 to 20 cases a day from that time up to now. So we've been on our feet working all this while. And thanks be to God, from that time we haven't lost anybody. The biggest challenge in the facility is where we are supposed to keep patients. In fact, Kwesimintim was a polyclinic, I hope you all know. And they upgraded it to a hospital. But trust me, when it comes to the infrastructure and other things, nothing was added. It was just the name. So we have a big challenge with space. So we had to convert one of the patient waiting areas to be the ward for cholera cases. It has helped though, but it doesn't look good.
The head of Institutional Care Division of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Lawrence Ofori Boedu, and his team are in the region to have at first hand what is happening and provide the necessary assistance needed to battle the cholera outbreak.
Now we have 4 regions that have recorded cases. That's Greater Accra, Central Region, Western Region, and Eastern Region. Officially, that are reported cases. But now, as we speak, it's Western Region that is having more involving cases. The condition in Greater Accra is calm. We're not recording active cases in Greater Accra any longer. The condition in Central Region is also calm. We're having very few emerging cases that are mild cases coming up.
It is Western region that we are seeing that the numbers are coming up. More people are reporting to hospitals. So we have visited about 5 hospitals and we are seeing that the numbers are increasing. Averagely, we go to the hospital, we have about 24 people on admission, which wasn't the same in Western and Greater Accra and Eastern region. So the concern is that we have come here to see what the region is doing, to advise, to realign with them, and then to make sure that nobody dies. And that's the most important thing. On the ground, we have seen that the team are doing very, very well. A lot of people are coming on board to support, but we need more hands. Because you know, cholera outbreak is not about only health. It needs environmental support, we need water support, we need security support, we need logistics. Health alone cannot do it.
The Western Regional Coordinating Council and health authorities are working tirelessly, but the numbers remain overwhelming. Community participation is crucial in preventing further spread.
In our next story, the Vice-Chancellor of the Simon Diedong Dombo University of Business and Integrated Development Studies, Professor Emmanuel Kanchebe Derebele, has expressed concern over the slow pace of work on some infrastructural projects at the university. Some of these projects were awarded over a decade ago but remain incomplete. The contractors abandoned the sites due to the Ghana Education Trust Fund failing to honor their payment certificates. Joy News Upper West Regional Correspondent Rafiq Salam reports that the Vice-Chancellor outlined measures to address the university's infrastructural deficit.
Before the year 2019, the Simon Diedong Dombo University of Business and Integrated Development Studies, SDDU-BIDS, used to be one of 3 campuses of the University for Development Studies before it was granted autonomy. The university was established by an Act of Parliament, Act 101, clothed with the mandate to become an international acclaimed applied research and practical-oriented educational institution dedicated to the development of business and integrated development studies. Vice-Chancellor of SDDU-BIDS, Professor Emmanuel Kanchebe Derebele, posited that the university over the years has continued to expand its academic programs and strengthen its engagement with the local and global community. He said the university seeks to produce graduates who are not only well-versed in academic disciplines, but who has interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary skills that will make the difference in an increasingly complex world. Professor Emmanuel Kanchebe Derebele then turned his attention to the infrastructural deficit at the university. Mind you, the university started with a seed capital. There are a sea of uncompleted projects dotted around the university, and as a result, some faculty offices and schools are located in rented buildings outside the university campus. In fact, the newly constructed 2,000-seater auditorium really exposes the infrastructure deficit of the university. It was full to capacity, no inch of blade or space for the graduates, let alone their families. More than half of the graduates and their families ended up staying outside the giant edifice for the entire duration of the congregation.
We may all be aware, one of the biggest challenges of the university is the huge infrastructure deficit arising from funding challenges. We are grateful to government for starting some GET Fund projects and granting us the appropriate clearance for completion of the projects. We have engaged with contractors and we appreciate the commitment to investing and completion of these projects. Nonetheless, the biggest challenge is the delay in payment of certificates by the GET Fund. Hence, innovative ways to financing is inevitable if we are to complete these projects for use within the shortest possible time.
He spoke of some measures put in place to address the challenges.
To address this challenge, executive management presented a concept note on what we call an accelerated GET Fund infrastructure completion project or initiative. I am pleased to report that Council approved the concept note yesterday, and we will aim to present the proposal to Council before the close of this year. This special initiative seeks to draw on internally generated funds and other possible sources of funds for a speedy completion of priority projects on campus. If this works out well, we will relocate all faculties and schools in town to campus within the shortest possible time.
One municipal chief executive, Isaku Tire Movement, pledged a commitment of the government to providing quality education that prepares students for the 21st century.
In the era of research, government has established the Ghana Research Fund to support research initiatives in our universities. We believe that research and innovation are critical drivers of economic growth and development. As we move forward, we will continue to prioritize education as a key in our national development agenda. We will work tirelessly to address the challenges facing our universities, including infrastructure deficits, and ensure that our institutions remain centers of excellence.
Chairman of the Governing Council of the University, Loye Kwekuyamu Penchel, was commending the staff of the university for putting up their best despite the challenges they are facing, urged the graduates to be good ambassadors of the university.
That one day, nobody's going to judge you so much by where you graduated, where you took your degree from. But people are going to look at the content, first of your character, secondly, of what you have been able to do to contribute to society. And it is in that I believe that we've given you all the training that you require to be able to compete in that world that we are living in and in the future that we expect you to compete in.
A total of 2,321, comprising of 1,448 undergraduates and 873 postgraduates, took part in the third congregation of the university. Reporting for Dway News, Rafik Salam. Wow.
To business updates. In our first story, commercial banks are not buying all the dollars being offered them by the Bank of Ghana. This is what we have picked up from the market over the past 2 months. There's more in this report.
Past 2 months, checks by Joy Business has shown that most of the banks are not taking up the total amount of dollars that the Bank of Ghana has been supplying for the market. The development raised a lot of questions, especially at the time that most businesses were complaining that they cannot get access to the dollars from the commercial banks. But Joy Business is learning that the current dollar auction program is done in a way that the banks have given up a certain amount of cedis to get the dollars needed. Now, due to several programs by the Bank of Ghana that has reduced the amount of cedis that the commercial banks can hold, that has made it difficult to purchase the required amount of dollars when the Bank of Ghana undertakes the dollar auction program.
Now, Malcolm Limited, Ghana's largest and most popular retail department store chain, is now open at the Accra Mall, bringing one of the store's biggest and best-stocked outlets to residents in the cluster of communities on the west side of Accra. The retail giant commences trading as an anchor tenant at the Accra Mall today. Here is Group General Manager Francis San.
As you know, Malcolm wants to create a one-stop shopping experience where Ghanaians can shop with all their needs at one location. And this is one additional store that we are opening today. We have one more to open in Achimota Mall before the year ends. And the intent is to bring the shopping experience to all Ghanaians wherever they are. 20% is to introduce the shop to all people that are shopping this weekend, and so that they have something to experience and more money in their pockets when they are shopping.
And that's it for business, and that's also how we cap off the news of this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. But stay with us for the news review. 3 stalwarts join us for a conversation right here. We'll be right back. time now for the news review. But before I get into the guests and we start the conversations, this year's CompuGhana Cashback has been named Prime Cashback Season. And it's packed with goodies, incredible deals and exciting surprises just for you. Now, this Prime Cashback, CompuGhana is bringing you exclusive discounts, prime savings, and awesome surprises when you shop for products from any of their branches nationwide. You can find products from your favorite brands like Samsung, LG, TCL, HP, Lenovo, Dell, Midea, Nasco, Tecno, Infinix, Itel, Huawei, and many more. Visit any of the CompuGhana branches nationwide and enjoy exclusive discounts on all products. Now, CompuGhana has a wide range of IT-related products. Mobile phones, electronic products such as laptops, printers, desktops, tablets, televisions, fridges, home theaters, and even air conditioners and gas cookers. What's more amazing is that this year's Prime Cashback with CompuGhana has got great prizes with instant gifts and cash prizes for your shopping experience. Whenever you shop at CompuGhana this season, be on the lookout for the surprise team. Answer a question correctly and win instant cash and gifts. You deserve this opportunity too, so rush to CompuGhana now. The promo runs from now up to December, the end of December, that is. You can reach CompuGhana at compughana.com or call them on 0302 752 020 for more information. Well, joining us for the news review this morning, we'll likely have a third guest joining us in the studio, but for now we have Kwame Nkrumah Botsio, who has decided to pair with me. He is General Secretary of the CPP. And of course, my friend to the other end did not get the memo. He did not get the memo, so he got here. But at least he used colors that mix. So we can say he is in a foreign fugu or batakari. In the person of Mussa Dankwah, he's a legal practitioner and a member of the Movement for Change. And guess what? Our final guest is also in fugu. What tom? What tom?
Serious in tom.
You see, this was not orchestrated, but you should have got this. Where did you sleep last night? At home or at
certainly
friends
at home.
or at
certainly at home.
Certainly at home. Because I think the spiritual connection,
exactly.
You missed out on the spiritual connection.
I didn't decode.
You didn't read into the way the hieroglyphics.
I concede.
You concede, eh?
I concede.
It's also the house he was in when we were at Chimata. You know, we are yes, JPEG house, they don't really get the memo of.
Oh, Charlie, but you had to cut him like that,
We've given you Ghana a president. We've given Ghana a president.
Serious. So let's do this. Our usual minute and a half. I'll start with you so that you can share your thoughts very quickly with us.
So let's wish yourself a good morning. Ghanaians a good morning. Always a pleasure to be in my brother's company. I think my thoughts has to do with the need for us to come together as Ghanaians to rebuild our country. We all know what has happened. Ghanaians have spoken with a loud voice. I think where we are in a country where political leadership seems to have lost some kind of credibility, where the economy itself has lost credibility. I think it's important that at this stage of our national discourse, we put aside partisanship, come together as Ghanaians, throw our weight behind the president-elect, and do our small bit in the cry to rebuild our country and restore hope in democracy as the only governance system of choice. Because if you analyze the election results critically, my biggest concern was the almost over 6 million Ghanaians who decided to vote with their feet. For me, that vote was a vote that suggested that they seem to have lost hope in the ability of this system of governance to deliver for them on its promise. And so let's at least put a hold on partisanship a bit for now, and let's all come together as one people and rebuild the country, not necessarily in terms of infrastructure and all, but also in terms of the credibility of the democracy as the only system that can guarantee for us the rule of law and thus guarantee for us our right to life, our right to liberties, and our right to pursue our individual happiness.
All right. Mr. Botio, hold your horses. I'll come to you shortly. But that also reminds me, and that's why yesterday I was a bit upset when, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, Boku of the NPP was sounding as though, nothing will change and in 6 months Ghanaians will be suffering and all that. Whatever the case may be, systems at the grassroots must change. Things must change. But you don't wish suffering on Ghanaians or insult those who went out to vote a certain way, simply because they didn't vote your way. But if you look at the daily graphic, I'll come to you for your thoughts, don't worry. If you look at the daily graphic this morning, there are some interesting headlines there, the Daily Graphic newspaper, addressing economic challenges, new government needs solid team. That's according to the experts. Then handover notes ready for next government. Administrator General says that. Then there is student stabs teacher in the eye. Nat demands justice for victim. Major General Anita Asma gets UN appointment. And that's a feather in Ghana's cap. I was so proud when I saw this yesterday. We're still doing great things as a nation in the United Nations setup. And then there's also transition team probes last-minute deals, payments, recruitments involved. And then on the back page, aftermath of 2024 polls, TUC GBA condemn actions of rampaging youth and immigration vehicle crashes 2 apprentices near KJB. Okay, so those are some of the stories there. But let me pause briefly and come to you, Kwame Nkrumah Botio, for your quick thoughts this morning. It has to be very quick. Time has been lost, so let's make tracks.
In just a few seconds, I would say that we've had a successful election. And I have down those I call the 10 heroes of this election, starting with the media. This time, they didn't give traction to rumors and anything that would fan the flames. They did their investigations, got to the bottom of everything. You are at number 1 on our list. Number 2 goes to the EC. They did things very professionally, in spite of all the rumors of rigging. I think they did a very good job. It was free and a fair election. And the IGP, Dr. Dampare, he ensured order. The CDS, Lieutenant General Opon Pepra, he did well. The other security heads. And our incoming President Mahama, he has shown the usual maturity that he always shows, calling those who are causing instability to order. And then our first ever female vice president, I think she's also done a good job during the campaign. I would want to commend her. And I would also want to commend the CPP leadership. You know, we came to this election late. It was under the intervention of now Professor Dele that we managed to come together and unite and indeed increase our votes by 90%. NPP votes fell by 40%. NDC votes came up by 0.1%. CPP votes increased by 90%. And I want to commend all CPP members and all Ghanaians. And finally, the reason why today's smoke seems to be in NPP colors. I know the best on the ballot was Nana Frimpong Sapon Komankoma. She's the one I voted for. I didn't vote for Baumia, but I think his concession has moved.
If you hadn't mentioned him in that list, I would have mentioned him.
Oh, yes. That is why I'm even wearing NPP colors today. I didn't vote for NPP. I voted CPP. But in honor of Dr. Baumia, his concession has made him not only an elder statesman in Ghana, but a statesman of international proportions. I think we should encourage him to be used as a mediator. I mean, the UN should look at his work. We have, life and politics goes beyond Ghana.
You appear, though, to be sidelining him to the... he says he's lost the battle, not the war, so he will probably be preparing for 2028.
I think he should rather be looking at... he can go for 2028, but right. he's needed on the international scene. If you look at Ukraine, Russia, Yemen, and we need people like him, people who have a heart for peace, and I would commend him. He's number 1 on Well, he is also on the list of 10.
All right. Thank you very much for those. There have been calls, some people, even when I went out on the street, some people said, retain the IGP. I think the IGP has added some
did an excellent,
flavor to, not just in the elections, but sometimes you go somewhere, you know, as media people, there are different engagements and you're coming back late and all of that. Police visibility. I think he's done, I mean, there may be the negatives. There may be even the entire recording saga and all of those. But I think he's introduced something into our policing that I think is really good. Very quickly, I've taken your thoughts already, right? Okay, let me bring in Prof. Good morning.
Good morning.
You've also joined the fraternity.
I told my friend.
He missed the memo.
He doesn't listen to me.
Okay. Prof, so your brief take, it must be very brief, but I don't know whether you would concede. The last time you came here, I told you that whoever won this election, whether NPP or NDC or any other person, would win by a wide margin. And you said to me, oh, it's going to be close, nail-biting close. Will you concede now?
Well, I have no option than to concede. I don't know when he became a prophet. Now when you speak, I'll take it.
You take it more seriously.
I'll tell you.
Anyway, quick thoughts.
And good morning to our viewers and listeners, and good morning to my good friends. Ghana, we have won. That's what I would say. Today I can wake up, go for lectures, go to school, as if nothing happened in the country. And it's all about maturity. We are not matured yet, but the processes that will lead us into that space, I think we are getting closer. There were flashes of isolations of few issues that we had as a country during the elections, but I must say that we have done well. The media, fraternity, the NPP, the NDC, my good friend, the movement. We've done well. There are some individuals that I can mention. One is IGP, played a key role in the success of what we have achieved. That of NPP, for now, I normally have 3 words that I've been using for the past 2 days. They should retreat, regroup, and re-strategize. These are 3 things I will tell them. The party would need an open surgery, and I'm sure one of your newspapers' headlines focused on that. But you don't do surgery in public. Surgeries are done in a confined environment. They need an open surgery, but should not be done in public. If you do this, you'll not solve your internal problems. So I will urge the party, the hierarchy, the major players within the party that please, it is time to reflect. It is time to accept the defeat in humility. It happens, not the first time, and it will be the last time. To the NDC, they've exhibited maturity in their jubilations. There were few issues that were reported. We want to encourage them. They have right. NPP should allow them to jubilate, to have fun.
But in moderation.
Moderation is their time. NPP, they've enjoyed before. They've been in power for 8 years. It's a change of emphasis, a change of direction. We should allow it. It's painful. When you're going for a war and you think you've armed yourself so much and you get such a result. So Ghana, we have won as a country. Democracy is still thriving. International community, I mean, they've expressed their appreciation in terms of what we have done as a country. Today we are fine. We are colleagues. We tease each other. It's normal. We shouldn't fight.
And that's the beauty of what we do. You can have one family, some voted this way, some voted that way. We all come and we move
Those on the street fighting and killing people, I tell them, look, the leader doesn't know your name. You don't even have CV. They don't even know you. So we shouldn't get into that space. It won't help our democracy. But thank you. And I'll take you. I'll have to come to your church going forward.
Thank you so much for those initial comments. One thing, though, gentlemen, before we get into your papers, I don't want to start from my end. I noticed this because I had told a friend that, listen, now that John Mahama has won, and he and his party members, they have to be very sober about this and not, it's not that you can't rejoice. But know that the work ahead of you is gargantuan. It's not a joke. So this is not time for merrymaking. I like the posturing so far. And I say so far, because if you watch from every step through the election, from voting after paying a visit to his father's, burial site, to when the results were trickling in and he was spoken to at the family house office and all of that, to accepting after the EC, and even to meeting, the apostolic, his church grouping,
Assemblies
and then
of God,
the imams, the chief imams delegation.
Yeah.
He appears to be very sober, reflective, that this is not time to, hey, we've won. It's time to, So hopefully they keep it that way, because we've seen in this country times where, yes, jubilation and, unfettered jubilation. But the real work that must be done before long, people become arrogant. They are not doing the work. Let's get into the papers this morning. I'd like to start with you, lawyer, on this bit. So your Republic Press.
So it says the economy bounces back. Finance Minister confirms. Ghana's Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, has announced that the country's economy has rebounded with strong fundamentals in place. The nominal size of the economy has grown significantly, reaching 76 billion, with expectations of further growth before the end of the year. This represents a 20 billion increase over the past 7 years. Several notable achievements have been recorded in the macroeconomic front in 2024. These include strong recovery. Growth has averaged 5.8% for the first half of 2024, the highest in the last 5 years. Decreasing inflation. Inflation is trending downwards. CD recovery. The CD has recently recovered. Maintaining fiscal discipline. Despite being an election year, the government has maintained fiscal discipline, even with massive infrastructure projects underway. The government has successfully completed its debt restructuring program, both domestic and external, and negotiated a 3 billion 3-year IMF-supported program. Improved external sector balances. Ghana has posted strong external sector balances and improved gross international reserves significantly. The government has committed to implementing programs that enhance welfare and social protection, especially for vulnerable members of society. Overall, Ghana's economy is on the path to recovery with strong fundamentals in place. The government's commitment to fiscal discipline and social protection programs will help ensure sustainable growth and prosperity for all Ghanaians. Okay.
Any reflections on that? Or are there other stories you want to do quickly?
So, Mama pledges inclusive government, and this is at page 3. So the President-elect John Dramani Mahama has assured Ghanaians that his incoming administration will prioritize inclusive governance despite the National Democratic Congress NDC securing an overwhelming parliamentary majority in the recent elections. Mahama made this promise during a courtesy call by the National Chief Imam, emphasizing his commitment to democratic governance. He vowed to consult with the new patriotic party at every step, ensuring that decisions are made by consensus rather than imposition. I wish to assure my father, National Chief Imam, and our fathers that we are not going to misuse the majority we have in Parliament. Mama said, we are going to consult with the NPP at every stage and make sure that we do things by consensus instead of railroading everybody. Mama also acknowledged the challenges ahead, describing the election victory as the easy part compared to the work required to rebuild the nation. He emphasized that this term is his legacy, marking his final chapter in politics, and pledged to give his utmost best to create lasting progress. The President-elect's commitment to inclusive governance is a welcome development, especially given the overwhelming parliamentary majority secured by the NDC. Right. As Mahama, because I think, concerning the economy bouncing back, you see, we find ourselves in a similar situation to the situation where the NPP found itself when it came. You see, our politicians need to be humble and continue to tell Ghanaians the truth. If there's one thing about an IMF program, what it gives you, what it guarantees you, is stability. So when they came in 2017, we were in an IMF program. It granted us stability.
And we're also benefiting from the 2016. You see, because of the program, we had also been disciplined. Exactly. So the benefits dovetailed into 2017.
Failed then was to build on that stability in terms of the terrible fiscal decisions they make. I still cannot understand the life of me. Why you spend close to about 5 billion on NAPO, a useless program like NAPO, and spend only about just 400 million on a program that is meant to be transformational, like the 1D1F.
Yeah.
You understand? You had this term called...
To get us to industrialize.
Exactly. Because that's the only way in which we can build the resilience we need. there again, they are talking about economic bounces back. He needs to be humble. The minister here needs to be humble and tell Ghanaians that the economy is stable not because of our ingenuity, but because of the IMF.
Right.
Yes. Because if there's something that politicians have shown us, that having been to IMF for 17 times, we seem not to be learning. Because how is it that immediately IMF comes in, you understand, we manage to be fiscally disciplined, to do things that grants us stability. And
it's clear if we hadn't gone for the IMF's help, and even there were options apart from the DDEP, we chose the lowest hanging fruit.
Exactly.
And we hadn't done a DDP, which has caused a lot of pain. Our economy probably would have been bonkers by now, which also goes back to the point you're making, that we had been reckless. And mind you, then we started borrowing as well for projects that basically did not deliver.
For NAPO, you understand? We started borrowing for NAPO. You understand? You see, and also the arrogance. You understand? We must learn, and I hope Mahama will learn, and then he finds a way of building on the stability the IMF has left us. Now, what our advice, Mahama, that to sustain this growth, he needs to be. We are Ghanaians. You understand? Our GTP is there. All the answers are there. Mahama can take the GTP, follow the GTP, apply the GTP as if it was an IMF program. And I believe if it does so and it does that well, then we can be able to sustain the growth that will cause the economy to be resilient. Also on the Mahama pledges inclusive government. In fact, I must say that I've been very impressed with the kind of sound bites that's coming from the president. Already he's showing fantastic leadership. You understand? Having won this overwhelming, as in the election in this overwhelming manner, and clearly, our president, sitting president, and his vice, the chairman of the police council, you understand, clearly having, as in what's happening, the looting and all the things that happen, for me is a reflection of the fundamental lack of leadership that was shown over the past 8 years. The fact that they failed to build the institutions, they failed to create the right political culture. You understand? That will be tolerant, that can hold people accountable. So for me, I feel that it was very unfortunate for the vice president, having considered in a very beautiful way to come out and then say that the incoming president should call his people to order because you are still the chairman of the police council. You are still the chairman of the police council. You are still the people who wield the executive powers. And so for me, I'll commend Jomama, like I said earlier, if there's a time for us to come together as a people, throw our weight behind the new leader and rebuild the loss of political credibility, the loss of economic credibility, then the time is now. And I think Mahama, by the kind of things he's saying, and I hope when he actually becomes the president, as in on the 7th January, it won't be a matter of just words, but even how they also act. It will be one that can bring all of us together, build a system that is truly inclusive, you understand? So that we can all together build a nation. Nobody will come and build Ghana for us. All of us must, as a word, must build this country, and we must build it behind the right leader. And I'm confident that this time around, based on what he's saying, based on the magnanimity of how he's handling his victory, we can rally around him and then cause the transformation that this country desperately.
Quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have some thoughts from the same angle that he has.
Let's make our thoughts pretty brief. There are a lot of papers. So
regarding the economy, I would take the first story from the New Finder. Ghana poised to exceed revised GDP growth targets. It is true that the NPP made a lot of mistakes, as my friend said, regarding their priorities when it comes to the economy. But I would say that I'm glad they are going out to the bank, as I would say. Honorable Matthew Opoku Prempeh stated that hopefully by the time His Excellency Nana Dankwah Akufo-Addo hands over power, he would have exceeded Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's record. He was not able to do that, in my estimation. But at least for them to have exceeded the growth target of 4% for 2024 as projected under the third review of the IMF-supported program. They should be commended. At least they are going out with some good results. And whilst they are licking their wounds, they can use this to more or less comfort themselves. And another major story that I would also want to look at is IMF wants renegotiation must align with program objectives. The IMF programs are not always comfortable things. You have to make some adjustments which do not augur well with the citizenry. But as my friend said, we should unite behind President Mahama, and all Ghanaians should patiently unite behind him if it entails belt tightening. Because, you know, the mantra of most governments when they come is that the previous government has destroyed everything. There are times when there are a few problems. I remember His Excellency President Kufuor, somebody I really look up to as one of the most successful presidents in Ghana. When he came, he said, "Aka don't pay," as in everything, all the meat has meat, and Aka don't pay. So Ghanaians going into 2025 say, "Aka don't pay cry." Let's be patient. Let's back the new president, because if he succeeds, all of us will succeed.
Okay.
Another story I would also want to look at is the ORC delisting looms. 500,000 businesses, 5,000 companies at risk. The ORC is doing a very good job. When you go there with their facelift, everything is organized, everything is fast. And Mrs. Jemima Wari is doing a very good job there with their education on the things to do when you have a company. And nowadays there are regular text messages if you are late in filing and all that. And I'm happy about the publicity that they are doing regarding the delisting of the companies, so that anybody who has any issues at the ORC will be up and doing, because all these businesses, all these companies have employees. If they are delisted, if they are closed down, people will go home. So it is a good thing that the ORC is doing, and businesses should be up and doing to protect their employees, to make sure that their businesses are on their feet. If there are any penalties, they should go and pay, so that the 2025 economy and onwards will be on sound footing. And also we have daily guide, no major post-election incident in 24 hours.
I think we should hold on the daily guide for now. Let me go to Professor Boedi on this one. But Andrew made a comment. He spoke about the economy and all of that. In the transitional process, some things have emerged. Because you are a finance person, I just wanted to run that by you. The ECG bit and the 240 million Ghana cedis, which an attempt was made to pay. And the transitional teams, the side from the NDC said, no, you can't be making such payments at this time, this late time. Let us come in and do the right thing. Then there have also been issues in terms of recruitment, where there's been a move to recruit into certain services. And they've said, how can you be doing this in the dying embers of your administration? But this also wouldn't be the first time we've seen some such actions. What are your thoughts on them, and how do we sanitize these processes?
Yes, I've not read that story into details, but I've chanced on a few comments in that regard. I think I will, before I come back to the what my good friend raised on economic related issues, I will touch briefly on what the question you asked. In fact, in transition, we should be very careful how we organize such a process. You don't need to overly burden the new government with other expenditures. I don't know the entire story, but this should not be the time of...
In fact, if you listen to Felix Kwashiorforsu, he says the timing of this recruitment would have severe fiscal implications on the incoming government. And he says they raised strong objections to those maneuvers and requested that they be put on hold. The government side agreed to this, and that they would forcefully insist that it was a dangerous precedent. to set. Of course, if you make these recruitments, then the incoming administration will be saddled with
a lot of
those. The former president, who is now the incoming president, has also said that he's going to renegotiate the IMF, deal we have, for example. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll touch on all these. Has it happened before? This exercise. When a government takes over, the other government wants to recruit a lot. Has it happened before? Yes, on several times. But we can't all the time be doing this. There should be a stop at the point in time.
But to this scale, I guess the scale is the problem. Because I remember when Domelevo was brought in and the Shrad boss was brought in. I mean, the timing. But with these, you're talking recruitment of quite a chunk of people, which would mean, that the public purse, a lot of where we bleed is public servants and all of that. So if you have another chunk coming in, it means you will definitely come and suffer.
Yeah, so it might not be a good practice. For me, you've lost the election. You should be circumspect with whatever you do and transparent. Because you then force the incoming president or the administration. They will reduce. They will not allow these new recruits to be employed. To be honest with you, they will come and review their contracts. And then the whole thing will blown up in our faces in the country. I think they should have time and then look at this recruitment structure again. What is going to happen in the long period, you rather will give a lot of work to the new administration coming into force. Coming back to the issue about the economy, my good friend was initially indicating, I'll come back to the IMF renegotiation issues again, that the Minister of Finance should stop the arrogance.
All of them. They should stop arrogance.
But I have not seen that, to be honest with you. I have not seen that displaying that kind of... it's a good story to be told. Economy bounces back. We don't see the impact of this statement only in Ghana, but outside, beyond our jurisdictions. Because investors are all over the place. I don't know if the Daily Graphic or this Republican press had reported the economy in tatters. What would have been the story? Wouldn't have liked that. In fact, after election, people are expecting the country to be turned into a chaotic situation, that people cannot go to work and economy. But if it's a good story like this, it helps all of us. And I think it's a good story to be told. And was he lying? That's the first thing. The figures he churned in here, I think they are factual to be, a large extent. Now, if you look at the economy, the structure of our economy, mainly fiscal policy, that is one, that's controlled by the Minister of Finance. We have the BOG controlling the monetary policy. We have the external sector sitting somewhere. We also have the real sector economy. All these will feed into the economy. To give you the figure.
They are interwoven.
Yes, we are talking about. If we have reported a growth, there's nothing wrong in the phase of our crisis to report. What figure did he put out there? He talked about and showed that our debt situation and then the economic growth. In fact, from all these years, we were hovering around, in terms of the economic growth, in 2022, 3.8. Then it took a nosedive to 2.9. As of 2024, the second quarter, we're cruising, I think, 6.9. I don't know the figure the minister put out there. I don't know what that's 7?
Growth.
The growth?
7.2.
7 points. It's a good story to be told. So he has not done anything wrong. He has not exhibited any kind of arrogance in this regard. It's a good story. The government, the new administration going back to IMF for renegotiations. Well, it's a good call. For them, they are there to give you money to run your country. And they take interest out of that. The other thing we need to also focus on, for IMF to grant or to approve another disbursement, you go through a process. They don't just get up after giving you one, and because of the way you live your life, you're a nice person, we'll give you again. There are certain criteria you have to follow and fulfill before they can advance money to you again.
Right.
Ghana, have we gone through all? Yes. And that's why they have given us additional funding. if the new administration thinks that it's better...
We have to wrap on this point because there are papers to
go back and then renegotiate. That's a good call. Of course, I can go back to my the one who gives me facility and tell that person, look, can you reduce this rate because I'm doing so well? And I think it can be done. So there's nothing wrong. There was an interesting story. The new government need a strong team.
I'll get into those, but the point to be made, though, sometimes I think why these figures, Andrew makes a point, is that the macroeconomy also impacts the microeconomy. Now, you see he was talking about sustaining the gains. After the last IMF program we had from the NDC's dying embers, if we had done certain things right, then we would have seen the benefits on the ground, including what he spoke about in 1D, 1F. But because we were shambolic with it, we ended up over borrowing, going back to the IMF, and you see what that means is you start the process all over again. So all the time, you are reinventing the wheel. Yeah. You are always, instead of learning from that learning curve, you are always reinventing. So 1 step forward, 2 steps forward, then you go 4 steps back. Then you are now trying to catch up to 0 before you move forward. That's exactly what the issue is. So the macroeconomy, eventually, these figures mean nothing because in the end, you don't sustain it enough for the ordinary person to feel it at the micro level, which is in his pocket when he goes to the market and all of that. I think that's the point, not about not glorifying these figures. So you can sit on your high horse and glorify these figures, but to the man down there, they mean absolutely nothing. But there's this point that Charles Ewusi Forson makes. He says, Mr. Host, you are the same person talking about unemployment, and now you are saying the civil and public service is choked. When you quote me properly. I never use the word choked, though we know in some areas there's a moratorium or something. But it's about the ethics, the morals. You don't, when you've been voted out, sneak in a batch of people, so many people, you know you are not going to be in power. The next administration will come. The ethical thing is to not do that. That is the point. Okay? All right. So let's get into our papers. Prof, very quickly. We have to make the most of the time. Let's do the papers.
This has already been done. So
I'm sure your papers.
Oh, this is my... Oh,
yes.
I didn't know. But I like the other story where the government needs the expert team to...
I will do this. I will do this eventually, but I want you to... Just a quick headlines. If there's any one story that interests you, you do it. But you can do the headlines first. Then
I think there's something on the... Am I jumping to? Thank you. I think the NPP needs...
so the Informer newspaper is what you're looking at?
Yeah, I have the Informer newspaper.
Okay.
NPP needs open surgery to rebuild and heal wounds. I think I can comment, and then a few things on the issue that I best advise to the country. I made my comment earlier on the same regards, that NPP needs an open surgery to rebuild and heal wounds. It was something nobody expected. In fact, the results defied all odds. And I tend to agree with my good friend as a prophet now. Nobody expected that to happen.
I expected that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. You know, in every battle, you have casualties. That's a characteristic of any battle. You go into any war, you have people who die, others who made victorious. And if it happens, what do? You don't come to the public space, say things that cannot be substantiated. And if you want to go back and clear those things, it will be difficult to do that as a party. So it's not a good time. NPP must accept this defeat with all humility, move on. It's not the first time. Over the years, they've lost several times. They didn't die. The party didn't collapse. It's a good call. Maybe certain things were not done right. Now it's time for you to retract, regroup, and reorganize yourself and come back. Just 4 years. And even the politics started on the day of election, when it was announced. Then we started a new political game also began. So people will not rest. I think that we should give this administration some time, space, for them to plan. It's a good call for the entire country. We should give this administration some time. Maybe after inauguration, the 7th January, We've been given 120 days, all right? 120.
They have a 120-day social contract, but they should also not tickle themselves and think they have too much time, because the reality is that they are coming at a very unfavorable time. So time. I mean, yes, to be fair to them, you can't expect. Some people have said that then the prices of kenke should move from 4 or 5 cedis.
No,
it doesn't happen.
It
doesn't happen like that. So not maybe even in a year or two, realistically. But at the same time, the mindset should be there that time no day.
Yeah.
And you must hit the ground running.
So they should give them some space. Let them organize themselves as a party, new administration, organize themselves. If you can do anything, it should be at 120 days. And that is where a lot of think tanks are going to be formed. And they give not good pressure on this government to perform. Because after 120 days, you gave us a timeline of what you're supposed to do. So people are going to chronicle all these events. And every day they'll give it to you. You said you do this, have you done that? The checkbox are going to be ticked from now going after 120 days. So they should have a good team, a solid team to run this country. And it's for the good of this country. Right?
Yeah. Well, I see a message here. I think sometimes we really need education on some of these matters. Someone sends me a message. Halifa Savage says, we need Vice President Bawumia in the transitional team for the sake of Ghana. Mr. President, he is our brother. Put politics aside. North is going to fix Ghana. Do you get the problem with this?
No, let's just explain.
He is saying we need him. The transitional teams are appointed by both sides.
Yeah.
Do you get it? Yeah, no one determines that this person should be. It's the NPP side that determines who represents them. So obviously, some education needed there. Yeah. But you wanted to react to something?
To the NPP needs open surgery.
So we have to do it quickly. I want you guys to finish with your before I do mine very quickly.
You see, so there's something I'm hearing why the NPP law, but there's something that people are not saying. This NPP has departed radically from their core principles and values.
That's the NPP under Nana Addo.
Yeah, they've departed massively. Because you see, for me, I cannot understand how the NPP can sponsor a president who has delivered an agenda which is adverse, one, to the country's agenda, but also very adverse to the party's agenda too. Now you see, and the party's agenda can be found, one, in their history, but also in their constitution. Because you have a party that has as one of its core values being a belief in decentralization.
Right.
And under Nando's watch, I've never seen a government that's as centralized as his government. To the extent that even school feeding is
central.
Very, very, very central. You have a party that claims in their constitution that one of their objects is to maintain the environmental integrity of this country. And they've delivered a president who has created this as a settle down, actually caused his party people to partake in an exercise that has created an existential threat for all of us, the Galamsey issue. You understand? Then the question is, how did a party, the NPP, sit down and allow this? You understand? And I'm saying that people, especially in their strongholds, in Ashanti, voted with their feet. It's because they do not recognize the party anymore. The party do not reflect the values that make people to aggregate around. And unless and until they find a way of exercising the familiar spirit that has entered the party.
Familiar spirit?
Yes, I told my brother. I told him. Unless they find a way of exercising that familiar spirit that's entered the party, the familiar spirit that has made the party now Machiavellian.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very Machiavellian.
These are strong words you're using.
It's very Machiavellian because, you see, when Anado took over the party, it didn't value principles, it didn't matter. All that mattered was power. Indeed, when Anado took over the party, you know, NPP, when they said Kukudu, their response was Eshi. When Anado took over, their response became power. So for him, as being the Machiavellian, it's like for him, all that mattered was whatever we did to get power. And that's why a party like NPP, our leader could say, all that be die, and nobody found, as in, the danger in those kind of communication. It's why you understand? The coup d'etat against Afoko, Kwabna. In fact, indeed, I've said on this your platform that the NPP currently now is a threat to the rule of law. And you saw that in how they handled their communication in this parliamentary issue. That in spite of the clear terms of their constitution, the National Council still retains some arbitrary power to decide, make decisions against the clear terms of the constitution. That is arbitrary. That is against the rule of law. So unless they find a way of getting their values right, forget about them.
We have to make tracks, but a very quick one to you. You left the NPP, right? Joined the movement for change. If those things you are talking about happen and the NPP becomes better, will you rejoin the NPP?
You see, one, I don't believe the people in the NPP now, as the people who are the top echelons of the NPP, have in them. Because they themselves don't even believe in those values.
They don't have it in them to change to that face of the NPP that you knew.
To those values. Because they do not have those values.
Okay, so you're staying with the movement for change?
I'm not going back to this toxic.
All right. Thank you very much. Kojobo, we have to just do headlines now, quickly. So let's do the Daily Guide.
So back to Daily Guide. We have lawyer drags special prosecutor to court, which can be seen on page 6. It speaks of one lawyer, Emmanuel Dancer, Apia, has dragged the special prosecutor to court for breaching the Data Protection Act. Apparently, Data Commission Act. Apparently, the special prosecutor engaged, a foreign organization to conduct some work for the OSP. And I think the Chief Justice has to look into this. The special prosecutor, he has done a good job.
Right.
In this day and age, the data of the nation is sacrosanct. You don't allow foreign institutions, knowing the history of this country regarding the CIA and other things dating back from the 60s.
Right.
And we also have 14 Damongo NDC boys caged. We all heard about what happened in Damongo. And it harps back to 2016 when NPP won the election and they besieged Peduasi Lodge and DVLA and other places. And it is good that these boys have been called to order. As much as I know that the majority of NDC members are law-abiding people, they should stem this in the bud so that we don't have that what happened in 2016 with takeover of government institutions.
Right.
And then finally, we have the outgoing NPP MPs and their replacements.
Right.
I would say what has happened in Parliament is a landslide.
Right.
It's an earthquake. And with the majority that the NDC have, they can do almost everything in this country. And I would pray that the honorables should make sure that they use the power well and not abuse it, because such an outright majority can lead to abuse of power. But I know that there are a lot of good people in Parliament, and they'll make sure that they don't abuse this in order to maybe change the constitution to perpetuate themselves in power. And also, we have no major post-election incident in 24 hours, and that harps back to our praise for the IGP about his personal engagement in the political parties. He engaged with us regularly, and we are glad that the method engaged by the NEST, that's the National Election Security Task Force, has worked perfectly.
All right. Is there something little you want to add very quickly, and then we can...
Yes, I think you can go on. It was just some...
Okay. Well, there's also the counting that is ongoing as far as the Tessano issue is concerned. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, regarding the counting, it is good that it has been moved to the Tessano police station, because as much as, sometimes the presidential votes are a reflection of the parliamentary votes, but there have also been some instances, for example, Irabna Obin's seat, is it Okaikwe North or so? Apparently, only 219 out of the 281 polling stations or so had been counted. And the EC made a declaration under duress, apparently. That's what I heard in the media. Ablekuma North. That is what I heard in the media. I think we should be careful. We should be careful about forcing the EC officials to make such declarations, because this is going to lead to opening the floodgates to a barrage of legal actions.
Okay.
Where we will have reversal.
We have to go quickly. So let me just do this. The Daily Graphic newspaper Addressing economic challenges, new government needs solid team. That story on page 3. 4 analysts say the incoming president, John Dramani Mahama, will need to assemble a solid team capable of addressing the country's economic challenges to set the right governance tone for his second presidency, especially in terms of trust. I don't know whether I like the sound of solid team because we heard the last time, what a solid team, and they left us a very vaporized, liquefied term. So maybe we should choose another. We need a strong team. Solid, right now, the experience with solid is very liquid. So we have to be careful on that front. There's also, I know you want to react, but let me quickly go to this. Handover notes ready for next government. Administrator General says that. The Anchor newspaper adds, outgoing ministers' appointees banned from buying official cars. I think that's a good...
That's a very good
this. And then sad story, student stabs teacher in the eye, Nat demands justice for victim. That's on page 24. Wow. Gentlemen, we have to go. No more than 15, okay, so 20 seconds each. He spoke about the Ablekuma North issue, the collation, the Tessano issue. Would you like to talk about that?
In fact, no.
No, you don't want to. Would you like to talk about that, Prof? No. Okay, then let's do our final comments.
Yeah. So I'll just reiterate my position. We've had our elections. We have spoken. It's time for us to come together as one country and support the new leader, so that together we rebuild and transform this country.
Prof?
Yeah, he was doing an open surgery, and I told him that we shouldn't do that. I don't know why he can't do that in the Alliance area, because they also a part of the So we shouldn't stop the open surgery on radio and TV now. You can say whatever we need.
But we should be able to say whatever.
But it's important that we do this in our own small way. I think there was something on the president urging members. I think on cars or something they should not.
Yes.
I don't know the full story, but it's a good call. It's a good call. We shouldn't do things that will also overburden the new administration. So it's a good call that the president is saying that they should not. It's happened in the previous administrations and all that, but we can't perpetuate this. We can't continue to be doing this. So the government, we commend this Akufo-Addo for such initiative.
Okay.
Nobody should do this.
All right. Do you have any, very briefly, because you've spoken quite a bit.
5 seconds. I'll talk about the God factor. No matter what everyone says, Ghana is a religious country. Let's not take it for granted that it's by the grace and mercy of God that he has seen us through. We had imams and pastors playing a large role in this election.
Right.
As the Electoral Commission chairperson says, it is finished. Ghanaians have done a good job. Let's finish this year well. Let's try and accomplish all that we have to do.
Okay.
I mean, this is not only in terms of ethics, in terms of morality, so that everything will be good 2025 and going forward.
I'm sure the EC chair as well, when she said it was finished, you could breathe a sigh of relief after all these incidents. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining the conversation. Professor Isaac Bwedi is Dean of Accounting and Finance at the UPSA. Kwame Nkrumah Botio is General Secretary of the CPP. And Andrew Apia Dankwah is a legal practitioner and member of the Movement for Change, the one who wants surgical. You should have been a medical doctor. You can add that to your portfolio. But thank you, gentlemen, for joining the conversation. Up next, we have Muftau Nabila Abdullahi with Prime Takes. You want to stay for that conversation. We'll be right back.
Has been recollating the election result for Nsawame Duejiri, Akwetia, Suhum, and Fantiakwa North constituencies. 3 of the constituencies have been resolved, but of course, not without chaotic scenes.
Leave our section. With due respect, you are not part of us. You are not part of us. You are not supposed to be here. Go away. Go away.
After the NPP won Akwetia and Fantiakwa North constituencies in the early hours of Thursday, it took the EC returning officer 12 more hours to declare the Suhum constituency results at 9 p.m. and under heavy police protection.
I hereby declare Frank Esiadu Nakwen as MP-elect for Suhum constituency 2024 election.
Here's Majority Leader Alexander Penyumakin's reaction to a third victory.
We thank God
that when security was properly provided and the EC was firm, we've all seen transparently what we have achieved.
But the NDC's Peter Boama Otokuno says they will not accept the results of Akwetia.
When she called that they should stop, they had finished and they claimed they have declared. And that results declaration is illegal, it's unfounded, it's non-existent, and so the Akwetia is still outstanding.
It's past 1 a.m. here at the Collation Center. The EC, together with the political parties, are still divided on whether to accept the results from over 80 polling stations in the Nsawam Edwejiri constituency, which have some errors. Frank Anodompre, who is the MP and candidate in the election, is furious but firm he will win the seat.
See, I see something happening. People have pin sheet and yet they hold on to it and say, I don't have, just to prolong the declaration of the result. This is most unfortunate. I have won this election. Why are they dragging the matter? What is this?
After the long wait, the EC has postponed its final decision on Nsawam Edwejiri to 6 a.m. Friday morning. James Savaji, Police Training School, Accra.
Well, we're getting straight into our big stories, and exit polls indicate that the economy and jobs, unemployment, remain key issues that triggered a presidential sweep for the National Democratic Congress in an election that appeared too close to call by some, but it has now left some pollsters scratching their heads, relooking their methodologies and recalculating the fractions. We're getting into that. There's this man who literally put his head on the chopping board because he stuck his head out and said, his neck out and said, this is what I think. And his results, well, came true. He came out unscathed. I'm talking about Mussa Dankwah of Global Info Analytics, Executive Director. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to have you. How do you feel?
I feel vindicated and also excited about what the guys did, the guys in the field, our volunteers, our team of officers. I think they've put a lot into it to get what we got today.
All right. You had been projecting, and it was so close because you look at the Ashanti region, for example. You were talking about the NPP securing 69%, but if you look at some of the other aggregated figures, 65%.
We give them 66%.
66%?
Yes, that's our projection for them.
Which is pretty close to what the NPP actually got. And some people said they were outraged. They said you were concocting figures. But generally, when you look at the exit polls, what picture did it paint for you vis-a-vis what you told us?
You know, when we started getting the exit poll results in from 8 o'clock in the morning, what I was doing was to compare the exit polls to the opinion polls we've done prior to that. And once they were matching within 1%, 2% margin of error, I knew we would come out clean. And clearly what we see is that, look, contrary to what people were saying about MP people didn't come out to vote, they came out to vote because everybody else suffered the same decline.
Which I have also supported. I have said that you don't assume, people are saying, oh, MPP supporters, there was a decline of 40%. I'm saying, how do you know? 18 million people registered. You can't think that only you suffered the decline because you moved from a certain number of votes in 2020 to 4 million plus in 2024.
It's not backed by the data. In fact, when you look at the data we have, close to 20% of people who went for Nanado in 2020 switched their vote to John Mahama.
Close to 20%?
Yes, nationally. And in the swing areas, it's about 30%.
Wow. You're saying that as far as the comparative from 2020 to 2024 is concerned, 20% of those who voted for Nanado switched and voted for John Mahama.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to the swing areas where you can't really tell, 30% made the switch and voted for John Mahama.
Yes.
How did you come by those information?
Because we asked the voters who were voting, who did they vote for in the last election? So we ran a triangulation, what they call a crosstab, to see those who voted for Tessano in 20, who are they voting now? We saw that, look, this huge number have switched their votes.
Wow. So is that a post-election poll? Or is
no, it was done on the very day they were voting.
On the very day?
Yes. Once you voted, and we check your finger, you voted, then we'll engage you in a conversation.
I see. This is interesting. But generally, did you find any surprises in there, even per your projections? Were there any surprises? You look at the Ahafo area, which has a certain voting pattern. I will not even go to Ashanti first. You look at the Ahafo area. Western fell to the NDC, and that was a bit of a shocker. Eastern was close. I mean, it was, as some New Patriotic Party aficionados would say, unhealthily close, even in the areas where the NPP was winning, like Savannah, like Ashanti, like Eastern. It was unhealthily close. For the first time, you see the NDC getting, 679,000 plus votes in the Ashanti region. In the Savannah region, where the northeast region, Savannah is rather John Mahama. In the northeast region, where the vice president hails from, it was just some 30 or 40,000 votes. Same in the eastern region. What accounted for that?
If you look at our projections, I think the poll numbers 2 weeks before the last poll that we did, we had Bono and Ahafo under Mahama's column. Remember, I said on the good day, Mahama could win 13 regions, and then on the bad day...
You did say that.
That was exactly what happened in the election. What we saw was that in the eastern region, which I said much earlier, that NPP was focused on the Ashanti region, but Eastern could give them a shocker. And indeed, we saw how close Eastern was. If you look at what happened in the Eastern region, clearly there were a lot of people who were voting for Mahama that had previously voted for Nanado. So they switched the vote. Not that they just came out and switched the vote. So it wasn't just like people didn't turn up. They did turn up, but the vote didn't go where it's supposed to be going. Now, if you look at Ahafo, it was quite revealing that what we said was going to happen was what happened, but just that in the final model we did, we discounted Ahafo and Bono and gave them to Baumia because of the latest poll we did there. With hindsight, I think we shouldn't have done that. We should have stuck with the average that we had, which was clearly in the column of Mahama. But look, the economy was the issue. It was the economy. Then you come to jobs, then education. What we saw in the campaign was that the vice president was pivoting on education, but there were no numbers in education. The numbers were on jobs and the economy, and that was left free for Mahama to ride on.
I see. So in terms of disgruntled voters and the impact of the low voter turnout, would you say the NPP was more affected? Per what you're telling me now.
The region with the highest apathy was Bono East.
Bono East.
That was NDC stronghold. So the numbers were just all over the place. But if you look at the quantum of vote that should have come from Ashanti regions, clearly yes. But it didn't mean that when they come out, they will vote in a different direction because they will vote proportionally the way these guys are voting. Probably Mahama would have done 30%, not 33%, if the numbers had come out. So it wouldn't have made a lot of difference to MPP's chances in the 2024 elections.
Now, I mean, if you look at gender and all of that, the voting patterns, they paint an interesting picture. But there's something else that interests me. The performance of Alan Trebating and Nana Kwame Bediako. You had been projecting that Nana Kwame Bediako would get more votes than Alan Trebating. That indeed turned out to be the case. But how shocking was that for you in the Ashanti region with the numbers? Because this is where predominantly we saw that those two would make an impact and likely claw away votes from the NPP especially. But the impact wasn't that much, though.
You know,
Nana Kwame got more of those votes.
I've said that earlier, that the performance of Alan Trebating and Bediako eventually will be determined by how voters want to take a risk. Now, people wanted to take a risk, but they realized that this risk was too risky to be taken. In the sense that if you vote for Alan and Bediako in mass, and they get numbers and Mahama doesn't go to 50% plus 1, there could be trouble. And on that basis, I think they decided on the last minute that it wasn't worth the risk. So they all went for Mahama. That is why Mahama was outperforming the numbers we gave to him, because he was benefiting from the Alan and Bediako numbers. And remember, DMB's numbers stayed flat, which means that he didn't benefit from those who were switching votes from Alan and Bediako, but the rather went to Mahama.
I see. But the numbers, you projected that Alan and Cheddar would do better. They did not.
But remember I said to you that when you rely on the youth vote, you have the biggest challenge on your hand. How to get them out to vote. One thing saying that I will vote for you, going there to vote for you is a different matter. So everywhere, globally, once the youth is behind you, you must move to a extent where you move them from their homes or from their comfortable laptops and devices to the polling station to vote. And I don't think they did.
I see. Beyond all of this, did you expect, because though you projected the 66% or so for the NPP, looking at the turnout as low as it was and all of that, did you expect the NDC to get close to 700,000 votes in the Ashanti region?
Yes, I did.
Per the 30-something percent that you have projected for them.
NDC votes, people who vote for NDC, they are a reliable bloc in the Ashanti region. They won't be affected by lower apathy. Right. So they would come out regardless of what the numbers would be in Ashanti region. But that would have put them around 30%, not 33%, if they were heavy turnout on the NPP side. But I think another thing that we are making a mistake in Ashanti region is that we are assuming that most people there are NPP voters. There are a good number of people there who are floating voters,
right,
who stayed at home as well. And if
and it's also a bit of a melting pot. People come from different parts of the country and stay there.
Absolutely. So look, if those who were floating had come out, it could have been worse for NPP. It
would have been worse.
Yes, because in the exit poll, Mahama was getting about 58% nationally, and in the swing regions, about 65% of floating voters. So if they had come out in their numbers, that number would have broken the way it broke for Mahama. It would probably be a lot worse.
In terms of the parliamentary in the Ashanti region, the NDC is looking at about 10 seats, thereabouts. How shocking is that? I mean, they've never gone beyond four seats. Was that a shocker for even you?
Absolutely. I didn't expect them to do more than what they have 4.
They were projecting, hoping that they would break the 4 and maybe go to about 6, 7, but they got 10.
Yes. I mean, it tells you the dynamics have changed in the Ashanti region in terms of parliamentary numbers. And also, you see, when you have apathy on your side, and parliamentary seats are quite decided by a few number of votes. Once your people decide not to come, and people say it'll be our own vote, certainly the NDC guys will come out to vote. And that could make a huge difference. And indeed, what we've seen in the parliamentary numbers is as a result of that dynamics.
Now, if you go to the other stronghold, which is the Volta region for the NDC, it was an obliteration. It was disastrous because they had projected about 500,000 votes. I remember speaking to Richard Ahiagba, and he was talking about Kitu South and the work they had done there. But on voting day, it was completely, it was an annihilation.
Yeah.
Now, they lost the Hohoi seat. John Peter Ameu has lost that seat. And the projection they made, they got only about 11% of that projection. In fact, the vote was such a drop from what even Nanado secured in the last election of about 100,000.
Some thousand, yes. It's quite, it wasn't surprising because if you look at the approval of the president in the voter region, it was terribly bad. Very bad.
It was terrible.
Terrible in the voter region. And that would result in the kind of numbers that they got. But I was surprised at the steep of the decline. It was quite significant.
Yeah.
Very steep.
And then if you just want to look at this, looking at the general parliamentary picture, I'll come later to dynamics like religion and whether they played a role and all of that per the analysis you made. But this is like a 2/3 majority. This has not happened in, I mean, you'd probably have to go back to Nkrumah to see something as
last scale.
I mean, similar to this. Did it take you by surprise?
I don't think it did, because I think I was talking to somebody and I said to them that if NDC invests and believes in what we are telling them in public, they could win 2/3 majority. And they were laughing at me.
They were laughing at you?
Yeah, even the NDC were laughing at me.
Yeah, because members of the NDC said that, look, they were confident they would win and that they would secure a majority. In fact, they claimed that in 2020, there were some shenanigans which may have led to this hung parliament. And they felt that this time they would definitely increase, but even they could not have looked into a crystal ball and forecast that they would have this kind of majority.
When we made a call on Domi Kwabena, some said I was mad, frankly.
What was the call on Domi Kwabena?
That they were going to lose Domi Kwabena.
What were the specific figures you were looking at?
In fact, we were looking for NDC to win about 52%.
52%?
Yes, in the final poll. And the exit poll was almost the same number in the exit poll for Domi Kwabena.
That is Akurugu.
Akurugu.
In Domi Kwabena.
Yes.
And of course, that is still being contested by Michael Kwe Jr.
He said he wants to go to court.
Yes, and of course, the High Court would be the place.
So I wasn't surprised. Look,
but you were not surprised.
No, we called many controversial seats that nobody thought NDC had a chance. Tema Central, we called it long before it happened. Tema West, we called it. I
mean, these are strongholds of the NDP.
Yes.
Tema East, Tema West, Tema Central, strongholds. So one of them, I think, had switched green in the last election.
Yes, that's Tema East.
Tema East.
Okankwe South, we called it. Ablekuma West, we called it. Even Ablekuma North, we called it. We called Ayawaso Central, we called it. We called Ayawaso West, we're gone. And we called so many of them. In fact, in the Western region, we called Eviak, we called Kwesi, we called Chama, we called Escado. In fact, what flipped on our side was that we were expecting Tadi to flip, but Tadi stayed blue.
But second D,
we didn't expect it to, but it went green. So that was the sort of shocks that we had. Kakwan Soyim, he was long gone.
Wow.
And so I think the numbers were too good that people didn't even believe it.
Let's talk about two places. Yendi, the home of the former vice president,
I didn't see
Aliu Mahama. You didn't see that coming?
I didn't see that, no. I didn't see that coming.
Because on the ground, it appeared Farouk Aliu Mahama had quite a base. So that was a shocker.
That was a shocker. But you see, the signs were there. We did a poll, I think sometime in July. And Mahama was leading in Yendi about 52% or so, 52%. And people said that was madness. But I thought that was the early signal that we were getting. And we didn't believe in that. But with hindsight, I think we should have done much more work there to unravel what was going on there.
And that is where skirt and blouse voting comes. Because sometimes when you see those signals, it means that it could affect the parliamentary candidate. In this instance, we didn't see too much of skirt and blouse, did we?
No.
Not too much. People voted, and that's why you have such a wide gap in the parliament and also in the main election. Because people stuck to, if they were voting here,
they're not going anywhere else. And I think the state of parliament now didn't help people to do skirt and blouse. They've seen how NPP are struggling in getting their bills through the parliament. We don't want Mahama to go to parliament with that kind of slim majority. So they wanted to be very emphatic.
Let's look at a place like Nsawam-Eduajiri, Frank Anodombre.
I was shocked.
You were shocked?
Yes.
He's also one who is contesting.
Prior to that, I think 2 weeks before that election, we did a poll in Nsawam-Eduajiri. And he was extremely performing well. Maybe that extreme was probably...
Maybe you ended up speaking to one side?
Not necessarily, no. You see, when you go into a place and there's goodies going on, sharing goodies, the people tend to blend in, thinking you're coming to share something. So they will blend to support the party that is giving the money.
Did you see any money sharing or anything?
No, we have exit poll showing that the money was shared.
Money was shared?
Yes.
In Nsawam-Eduajiri?
All over the country. Including some areas. Yes, there were inducements across the country.
Ewutu Senya, I believe, east.
I saw it coming.
Mavis Hawakumsi.
I saw it coming.
You saw it coming?
Yes. Because, you see, before, in July, she was leading quite comfortably. And it was being helped by about...
That was about 4 or 5 months to the poll.
Yes.
6 months.
Yes.
Right.
And then, surprisingly, she was being helped by about 30% of NDC voters. She was quite popular among NDC people.
What happened?
I don't know. Apparently, she's very good, very kind. So she was winning minds and hearts. But I think when the attack on the PC occurred, the NAPO occurred, there was some violence, and that led to her arrest. And then she began to lose the NDC base. And then when she started sharing and branding products with her picture and DM's picture on them, she lost the floating voters, and the race became dead heat. And at that point, I said, 3 weeks before the election, dead heat means you are losing.
Wow. And she lost.
She lost, yes.
And then there was that subsequent shooting incident and all that. We'll not get into that. We're not here for security-related matters. We are here for election-related matters. Before we talk about Second D, Ejapa Mensah, and Efutu Afenyo Markin won.
Yes.
And it was to be expected as well,
yes.
per your projection.
Yes, yes.
But I want us to talk about Ayawaso West Wogon. You had already forecast that Lydia Sarah Malhassan was going to face challenges there, and she did. But do you think, you know that bit that came out about giving food and others to security officials during the special voting? Do you think, though you may not have conducted a poll, do you think it impacted the results that she got?
You know, I could even go to the exit poll and see people's responses to that in the constituency. But you see, Ayawaso West Wogon is an elite constituency, largely. You have a very good size of the constituency being people affluent. And those kind of things don't work in those areas. But we've also found evidence that people who use money in the campaign, the last days of the campaign, lost the election.
Those who tried to induce people with money within the last period, the latter days.
Yes, they lost the elections.
Let's look at the core issues that we saw that impacted the election. The economy, and then employment-related issues, unemployment. How much of a role, per what you saw right before the elections, did these factors play in the results we've got?
Look, I would say over 70% of the outcome we saw in this election relates to jobs and the economy.
Over 70%?
Yes. So when you have this issue burning and people struggling, I mean, there's no way you could win the election using the 30%, which is other matters and education.
Wow.
People were just going to vote based on their pockets, and they did.
I interacted in the course of the elections with Bright Simmons, and he said this administration had been one of the most tone deaf that he had experienced. And people also spoke about arrogance and all that. How much of a factor did those play? Did your polls?
No, we didn't touch on
any
those.
No,
we didn't touch on those. We were quite focused on key things that are. I know sometimes certainly those things would play a role, because when it comes to the middle class and the upper class, your posture in the campaign and how you engage with people in the media really puts some people off. It may be a reason why they will just make it easy for them to just vote you out, but may not be the main reason that they are voting you out.
I see. And then religion. Was that a factor? Interestingly, I mean, I think you mentioned that it wasn't going to be a major issue, but I spoke to a few people who would say, and I would not repeat what they said because I found it to be biased, but some would say, oh, I don't want this side because of this and all that. But I felt it would be a tangential issue. It would be a borderline issue. It wouldn't be a really reflective. What did you see? What was your reading? And after the polls, what is your reflection on that?
One, the Muslims were not going to be voting based on religion. The fact that you're one of them doesn't mean that you get their vote automatically. No, it won't happen. But there were evidence that some of the Christians were not comfortable with the Muslim president. That is a fact. I mean, we can deny it. It's not so much for the Catholics, the Methodists, the Anglican, and the Presbyterians. It was much of an issue for the evangelical groups, which is the Pentecostals and the charismatic churches. They have issues somehow with DMB, and that was going to impact on how they vote. Because there are so many issues with his economic jobs, there were enough reasons not to vote for him than just to use the religion. But for those who were caught in between him and John, I think those little things made a difference.
Right. Did ethnicity play any role in this?
No, in fact, let's go back to the exit poll on religion.
Right.
Among Christians, Mahama won 58%.
The exit polls?
Exit polls.
Right.
Bawumia 36%. When it comes to the Muslims, Mahama got 60% of the Muslim vote. Bawumia 33%.
In other words, even among Muslims...
no, it didn't work.
Though Dr. Bawumia is rather the Muslim, he lost more votes there to Mahama than even among the Christians.
Yes. Now, if you look at the Christian denominations across board, Mahama won in every group. Among the Catholic, Mahama won 5-7, Mahama 38. Among the Methodists, 56-37. Among the Presbyterian, 62-34. Among the Anglican, 56-36. Among the Pentecostals, 55-38. Among the charismatic churches, 59-32. Other churches, 60-34. And then you have the SDA, Mahama, 57, Bahama 34.
SDA,
yes.
There were issues about voting.
And among those Jehovah's Witnesses who voted, Mahama won, 50%.
I think it was a Jehovah's Witness,
yes.
rather.
Yes.
He won by what?
50 to 33% among the voters.
Wow. I see.
So it just across every block of...
all the strata.
All the strata. When you count the Muslim side, the Islamic sect, among the Sunnah is 65-28 for Mahama. Among the
Shia, they are the largest sect.
And among the Shia is 5-2 to Mahama, 39 to Bawumia. And among the Tijaniya it was 69%. That is shocking to me.
Wow.
He normally does well in the Tijaniya group. This time around, he really flopped, 69-23. Ahmadiyya, 57 to 20, 35, and then others 54 to 40.
I mean, every way, it's like looking at an object and turning it. It's like 3D. Every angle you turn it out
was same.
At the NPP was bleeding.
Yes. The signs were there.
What? I was saying that the NPP was bleeding. But anyway, now, in terms of, you've spoken about religion, in terms of ethnicity, what's the picture?
The story is the same. Mahama won in every ethnic group except in the Mande. Mande is made up of the Fulani as well, where it was tied, 44% apiece. And then among the...
And you could also read into that.
Oh, yes.
Because of Dr. Baumia's wife and all of that. So you could read into that and say that there was some support there
strongly
because of his wife.
And then the other group he won was the Guru ethnic group. He had 50% and Mahama 45%. The rest of the ethnic group was just a whitewash. Even the accounts, Mahama 51, Bawumia 40%.
Is there any other factor you think we should look at beyond, I mean, we've looked at the economy, unemployment, we've looked at ethnicity, religion. How about party affiliations? How did they pan out? Those who were hardcore NPP and those who were hardcore NDC, how did the voting go?
Right, okay, let's look at the responses, how people voted by party affiliation. Right. Among people who were NPP, 13% of MPP voters voted for Mahama.
13% of MPP voters
voted for Mahama. So those who were coming to vote for JD Bawumia, they didn't vote for him in that way. They went for Mahama, 13%. MPP voters.
That means if you are even looking at the exit polls from 2020 and looking at the different dynamics, the numbers,
yes,
and factoring in the low voter turnout and looking at how 13% would play, that would be massive.
It's massive.
Massive.
It's massive. Remember, about 41% of the respondents were MPP.
So the writing was on the wall.
On the wall.
How about the NDC? How did they vote?
NDC, 88% of them went for Mahama.
So 12%, what
went
happened
somewhere.
to those?
8% went to Bawumia, and 3% went to other candidates.
So while the NDC lost 8% of its core base,
MPP lost
13%. Yes. That's a gap of another 5%. And even that can change the tide of an election.
Absolutely. Now, if you look at the floating voters,
and that's where I was about to go next.
65%.
65% of the floating voters.
Mahama.
Wow. And the floating voters, in terms of the party affiliations, we were looking at about 15% of floating voters.
Yes.
And 65% of those 15% voted for John Mahama.
Yes.
This was a disastrous election.
No, it was. And we said earlier that, look, he needs to improve his standing among floating voters. If he continues to hemorrhage in the polls among them, that could be disaster.
If you look at even the current figures, there's been talk about the fact that projections from the NDC and also some of what has been seen, because there are some constituencies where collation is still being done. If you go to Tessano, the police station today, for example, some of that will be done there. The projections are that John Mahama, the EC declared 56.55% and 41+% for Dr. Bawumia. But the suggestion is that at the end of the day, it will be 58+% for John Mahama and about 40% or so for Dr. Bawumia. What is your take on that?
Remember, we were here some time back, and I said the gap between Mahama and DMB could be 2 million. Remember that?
Right.
On this particular platform. So the gap could be 2 million if care is not taken. So we're projecting between 1.6 million and 2 million differentials by the time we finish this election. So that is what we're going to see. Even if the turnout comes down, the margin still remains the same.
So you were suggesting that they could lose the election. And I think I do recall you said something like that. Almost 2 million votes.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we're seeing.
Absolutely. And that was
at the end of the day, you think it will inch towards 2 million?
Yes, it will. It will.
I see. But this verdict that the Ghanaian people have delivered, some also contend that it was more a reflection on Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and not so much on Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Do you agree?
No, this could be speculative.
Speculative.
Because you don't have data to support that. And I like to speak to data. I remember during the October poll, we asked whether the choice you are making is for a candidate or against a candidate. Just to see whether they are voting for Mahama because they like him or voting for Mahama because they don't like the alternative that they have been given. Maybe with time, we'll go back and ask voters what really drove the decision to vote the way they did. But here, I can't speculate.
All right. We've looked at Ayawaso West Wuogon. Let's look at Second D, where Ejapa Mercer lost. What happened?
I think the people were being...
Because you forecast that Takrade would flip and Second D would remain.
Yes, because...
But Second D rather flipped and Takrade remained.
In the polls, he was close to about 60% of the support he was getting at the time. And I believe the voters were just being cunning with their true voting intent. But normally, you don't see that kind of huge swing from a very strong winning position to a losing position. It means people have been a bit cagey with their responses in that constituency. And if I had that kind of suspicion, we would have used a different way of triangulating the result and see whether they were lying to us or not. But there was no sign that they were lying. Rather, we were expecting that Tadi could fall, because Tadi, the gentleman had lost about 40% of NPP support. In his own base, he's lost ground. So we couldn't see how he was going to survive with that fall of support.
But he did.
But he did. He did, yes.
Do you recall what the margin was?
I can't remember.
Was it slim?
I can't remember the margin.
We'll have to check on the Takrade situation. Then there's Ifutu, where Alexander Afenyo-Markin, he came through.
No, we didn't expect him to lose. In fact,
he's strong in that constituency.
Yes. There were two strong candidates in the central region who were doing above 56%. And it was him and Atufosin. Nobody else in the region was doing that level. So I didn't expect him to fall.
Okay. Now, let's look at this. I would like us to look at the major losses, right? And maybe a few factors that could have accounted for those, from Ablekuma, Northwest, and all of that, Ursula, to other places. But before we do, your polls seemed to move away from what other pollsters were saying. I mean, the EIU and Fitch supported what you were saying, but even they were more moderate. But your polls seemed to be a shocker. People felt, no, this can't be. You said that even some of the NDC members felt, wow. I mean, you're projecting that we'll win all these places. They couldn't believe it.
No, they couldn't.
The NPP said you were fake. You were a fake pollster, that your methodology was faulty. Dr. Mahama of the Vice President's office, and some people said, no, this couldn't be. Ben Efson made a projection of more than 50% for the NPP. Professor Smart Sapon made a projection that the NPP will get about 49 point something, Mahama about 44 or 45%, and so there would be a runoff. It is your poll that has proven to be true. So in a way, you have won this polling battle for this season. But what do you think accounted for the disparities between your polls and these other polls?
I think they completely use a wrong sampling method.
Sampling method?
Yes.
Professor Smart Sapon sampled about almost 100,000 people across all the constituencies of Ghana.
In the last two polls that we did, every week we were sampling 2,500, and we got the results right.
It's not about the numbers.
It's not about the numbers. It's about the science of the deployment of sample and the randomness. The randomness is very, very key. You can't say that, oh, I've interviewed an imam can bring 10 people with him to vote. So if the imam is going right, they all go right. It doesn't work like that in politics. No. In social science, you could be right. But in politics, it doesn't.
Let's go back to the major losses. And for you, of course. I've mentioned a few of them, but the major losses and the factors that through your polls you had pointed to these losses likely happening. You can enumerate which ones you want to look at.
Look, let's look at the Boku West, Boku East, Sunyani West, Sunyani East. About 6 months ago, we said they were all going to fall. All of them. Bafo, and then Ameya Chireme. It was clearly that in the NPP, they've lost confidence in their own people. Also, the economy was biting. So you're going to have a down ballot effect. When somebody votes for Mahama, he's likely going to vote for Mahama's candidate. So you can see that the sins of the father, I mean, the MPP's unpopularity affected everybody that is running on their ticket, including some of the good MPs. You know, for Patrick Mahama to be where he is in terms of polling, it was shocking for me.
Right.
And I understand.
Because that constituency is also being contested now. And in fact, the other person has been declared, I think, the victor.
You know, some of this, what we've done is to go to the exit poll and see who actually won in the exit poll. And in all those places that we've seen, the exit polls had confirmed some of the results that had been published.
Wow. Hold for me. Let me bring in Dr. John Osai Kwapong. He's a CDD fellow, and he joins the conversation. Doc, good morning. Dr. Osai Kwapong, if you can hear me, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thanks for joining the conversation. First question. What we saw in the last election, I don't know how you feel about what we saw. Did you expect this kind of victory, both parliamentarily and, of course, presidentially, if you like?
No. And by the way, good morning to Mr. Mussa Dankwah as well. And if he would admit it publicly, every so often, I would reach out to him via WhatsApp, and I would say to him, what do you think about this race? What's your reading of the political temperature on the ground, right? Because I'm thinking he's in Ghana, he's much closer, and he's regularly conducting these polls. And he would give me some of his assessments, and he would say, my take on the state of the race hasn't changed. Then a poll would come out, or some other model will be revealed, and it would show that the race is a lot more competitive than he is showing. And then I'll reach out to him again, because at some point I used to say to myself, are we looking at an unconventional election where the vice president can actually squeak by with a really small margin of victory? Can he push this into a second round? Or overall, the NDC will still win this election, but it would be competitive. It would be close enough. So no, I personally didn't expect this margin of victory. And so as the results started coming in and I started looking at the numbers, one of the things I said to myself was, yes, Ghanaians may have been upset. If you look at some of the sentiments they were expressing, for example, in the Afrobarometer survey. But then I said to myself, nah, this is more than just being upset. This is like real anger at the ruling party, and they went all the way out to truly express that anger. But I honestly didn't expect the election results to look this way.
I see. But looking at the landslide, the nature of the loss, what picture does it paint for you?
For me, it is a strong disapproval of the blueprint of governance and politics that the ruling party served. That's my first reading of it. My second reading of it is that I know part of the NPP's narrative was the alternative is scary. But voters through this tell us that it is up to them to decide which alternative in our politics they find scary or not, which alternative they find acceptable or unacceptable. The third thing for me is that I don't think we take Ghanaian voters for granted, but I think Ghanaian voters are also showing us that they are a lot more sophisticated and a lot more nuanced than we would think. And I say that because I look at some of the last minute efforts of the ruling party around the various commissionings of infrastructure, for example. Besides that, if you look at the Global Info Analytics poll around inducements, if you look at Afrobarometer around inducements, if you look at the Codeo report around inducements, it also shows that those things don't really make a difference, right? That at the end of the day, voters they may even take your inducements, but would still express their true sentiments at the poll. And so if they've decided to vote against you based on how they're feeling about their personal living conditions, about the country's economic conditions, about the direction in which the country is going, about their perceptions of corruption, no inducements would change that attitude and how they have decided to vote. The last thing I would also mention is that, look, I've regularly drawn the attention of political parties to something that CDD Ghana picked up in one of their pre-election polls, going all the way back to 2016, which asked, what should you do if you are induced? And a strong number of people said, I will take the inducement, but I'll still vote the way I want to vote. But I guess for political parties, they also cannot do unilateral disarmament, right? That there's the fear that, well, if my opponent is going to induce and I don't, what if that inducement makes a difference? But I think this election is showing you that those inducements don't make a difference. In fact, if you look at the exit poll, one of the things that really surprised me was that 67% made up their mind who they were going to vote for more than about a year ago. So to think that that many people had already decided, what difference is your inducement going to make?
And if you look at that low voter turnout, it's pretty problematic, especially when we also have rejected ballots accounting for what? About 239,000. That could actually account for a win in any election. 239,000. That is gargantuan. Where are we getting it wrong with that? Because on both these scores, the NCC was educating, the political parties were educating on how to vote so your ballot is not spoiled or rejected. And again, encouraging people to go out there. Doesn't look like it may have attained the full scale of results they expected. Your take?
Yeah, precisely. And I mean, like you said, think about if we go back to the election that the late Professor Tamils won against President Nana-Addo. Look at that margin of victory back then and look at the number of rejected ballots.
I mean, Time gave a victory of what, 20,000 thereabouts?
Yeah, I don't think it was more than 50,000, right? So to think that 239,000 ballots nationwide were rejected is still very concerning. I mean, I know the political parties put in effort to educate voters on how to cast their ballot. I know the NCC did some videos, even the EC itself, did some video demonstrations of how to properly handle the ballot. And so it's still surprising to see that high number of rejected ballots. Maybe we need to look at the criteria we use in determining what a rejected ballot is. So one of the things that I said before the election was, if I properly cast the vote, but maybe in the folding of it, the ink spills just a little outside of that little box, if it doesn't show that, I tried voting for multiple candidates, for example, can we look at that ballot and still find it acceptable? But it will be a good exercise for the EC and the political parties to conduct on these rejected ballots, just to see what categories they fall into as a rejected ballot, and if there are some new rules that can be written around how we consider, or what we consider as a rejected ballot or not. In terms of voter apathy, for me, sometimes that is also a reflection of whether voters believe that an election makes a difference or not. So maybe they voted once, twice. They don't see any major changes in our governance architecture, in our economic conditions, in their own personal living conditions. So they may say to themselves, what difference is this going to make? I won't bother. It is also a reflection of, I voted this particular party because that is my political party. So in the case of the NPP, for example, one of my speculations is that I said to myself, if you are Dr. Bawumia, the support for e-levy, one district, one factory, for example, as shown in the AB survey, you could use that as a basis for continuing to make your case that, well, who is better placed then to continue with these policies that Ghanaians are saying must be continued. So I honestly thought that could make the ruling party a lot more competitive, but it looks like it still didn't make a difference, or it wasn't the kind of game changer that the ruling party thought it was going to be. And also think about the number of ads, political ads that I saw around free SHS, framed as protect free SHS, because the ruling party's narrative was that if you vote for the NDC, they will cancel free SHS. No matter the number of times President-elect John Mahama had said, I am committed to this, I just believe that we need to review it and address the implementation challenges. So it just looks like it really didn't change the nature of the race, like I believe the ruling party would have hoped.
Okay, right. You want to chip in something, Musa?
Yes, I think the NPP misread the polling data with Free Senior High School.
They did?
Yes. You see, there are two blocks of voters. Those who are at the bottom part of the society, they want the word free element. But those at the middle and upper, they want the quality aspect of the free education. And currently, we know that the quality is poor, but it's available for free. Access has gone up. But the weight of those who were looking for quality outnumber those who are looking for just free.
And even the level of free,
absolutely,
the quota of free.
Was also an issue.
I spoke to someone who was telling me that, look, it is free, but I'm ending up paying XYZ per week, spending about 500 cedis per week. So for me, the free element in itself is problematic because I get some things here, but then on the other end, I'm paying so much that I don't know whether I went or I came. That was, I mean, a few people expressed that to me.
Yeah, and that's the feeling of the voters. And then you look at the demography of those supporting the free education in its free form. You would realize that there were women and also of certain age group and then of certain income level. And that block of voters were outnumbered by the rest looking for quality, looking for better kind of things from free education. So I think they probably should have read the numbers very well. And there was no threat of cancellation. So you see, the general voters believe that NPP was lying. Because there hasn't been any statement by the NDC to say that it was going to cancel it. So to vote to protect meant that the other guy has threatened to cancel it. And in fact, that happened in 2020. And it rallied support for NPP in that time. I think NDC was taking back foot. I mean, they were really taken by surprise. But this time around, they fought hard to really demystify that cancellation. And that meant that the voters were coming and making a decision on the fact that, look, the guy hasn't said anything. You are lying. And that didn't go well.
Just quickly, on the gender situation, how did the votes pan out in terms of women voting for X or Y candidate, the two of them, and then men?
Let me just take a Look at numbers.
Because I think that's one area, when you were speaking about the women and free SHS, it occurred to me, we had not done gender.
In fact, Mahama won across all gender.
So what
among male, Mahama got 60%, 60. 132%. Among women, it's a bit closer, 56% to 37%.
56 to 37.
Yes.
I see. Coming back to you, Doc. This one. Have you been contacted by the NPP since the elections?
No.
Because a lot of them railed at you. In fact, a lot of them called you a quack, that you didn't know what you were doing.
I remember people like Kojo Safwa said, anybody who believes Boku will have a diarrhea on election day. I was wondering how he's doing now.
Okay. Kojo Safwa Boku. Okay, all right. Let me come to you, Doc. I see you're having a good laugh there as well. Were there any major shocks for you in terms of the parliamentary vote and how they panned out? What for you were the surprises? I mean, we could mention Sekondi, we could mention Yendi, we could mention Domekwa-Benya, we could mention a plethora of places, even in the Ashanti region. But what were the standout shockers for you?
So for me, beyond just even some of these individual races that you pointed to, again, is the margin, right? If you think of how closely divided the 8th Parliament is, and then you think of what kind of parliament we are going to get in the 9th Parliament, my take is perhaps one, the dissatisfaction in particular constituencies and the wave that was blowing in the rejection of the NPP is one, but also perhaps what voters saw in the 8th Parliament, that the closeness and sometimes the acrimony, the divisions, the chaos was not something they wanted to repeat in the 9th Parliament. That's one of my speculations. And so if they were going to give the mandate to President John Mahama, that they wanted to also make sure that he had the parliamentary...
So that may have accounted for the low levels of skirt and blouse voting.
Yes. So I think those two things account for how the parliamentary election turned out. And if you also notice, both parties in their campaigns began to emphasize how important it is to also vote for the party's parliamentary candidate as well. I mean, there were a few times where I heard statements being made in reference to the 8th Parliament that says, look, if you want the president to be able to do all the things he wants to do, then make sure that you also give him the parliamentary majority that he needs to be able to do that.
I see. There's this interesting bit I all want us to look at. And it has to do with, of course, this was a demolition job. It was, none of us could have forecast that it would be this disastrous for the NPP. I mean, you could go as far back as maybe the start of the 90s and see some of these results come through. But in conceding, the vice president said that they had lost, he and the party had lost the battle, but not the war. And there have been suggestions that he may want to make a comeback in 2028. When you listen to that and you look at these figures, and of course you can't just look at the figures and assume, because if you look at 2016, the gap of 800,000, 2020, the gap of about 500,000. Some would have said that, oh, NPP atia from crowd, 200,000. This one was, I don't know. What is your reading of that?
No, I think from what we are hearing, he may be lifting up his boot already for 2028. But he has things to go really against him. He made a case for his presidency that he will bring with him the northern region. And that he was going to bring the Zongo votes. And I think people bought into that. And for that reason, they gave him the nod. I mean, beyond the kind of whipping in line some delegates. The North didn't come. The Muslims didn't come. So when he comes back next time, what will be his argument?
So you're basically saying, and this is a very interesting point you make, you're saying that, I mean, the economic whisk hit, the economy did not go in his favor.
No.
He was supposed to deliver the northern vote. And to be fair to him, over time, the NPP has made serious gains in the northern belt of the country. Gains they were not making under Rawlings. Absolutely. Gains that maybe even under Kufuor they were not making. So you can give him that impact.
Prior to this election.
Prior to this election. But this election, it was
complete disaster, yes. Complete disaster.
Upper West, Upper East, Northern, Savannah, everything was swept away. Apart from Northeast, which he won by narrowly. Narrowly. Then you look at the Muslim vote, and even there, he lost the northern vote in a bigger form. I think 60% or so to Mahama, and he got 30-something%, even than among Christians. So you say these three will work against the second coming of Dr. Bawumia?
I believe so. And also, the polls have shown consistently that he's not strong in the Akan areas where MPP needs to do well in any election. In fact, prior to the polls, he and JM was neck and neck in Akan regions put together. So you could see a bit of hesitation among the Akans. And to be very straight to our Akan people, look, that is a fact, but they won't say that in public. They were hesitant in embracing Bawumia. Would they change their mind next time he comes around? Only time will tell.
I see. I don't know what you think about this situation, Doc, because you can get the sense that the vice president feels, I mean, the vote really went against him, and it did, and against the MPP. Some say it may not necessarily have been so much against him as against the president, but some say it was against both of them. But what do you think? The vice president, a comeback, is it on the cards for you?
From what he said, just like you had mentioned, from what he said in his concession speech, it appears that he would give it some thought and probably try again. If I have already seen, I mean, probably these are some of his own supporters as well, but I saw one or two posts on Facebook where, the person was saying, 2028, we need to go with him again. He would have to look at the results a lot more closely, probe it by whether it's, how it played out across the regions, all of that. But then his own party supporters, right, and what their sentiments would be will be key. If they feel like this one was mainly a repudiation of the Nana Addo government's blueprint for governance and politics, which he suffered it, quote unquote, unfairly, then let the public sentiments simmer, cool down, and who knows, 2028 or thereafter, they would have cooled down enough that they would look at him a lot more dispassionately than they did under the current circumstance. That could make him say, yeah, well, let me give it a shot. Or it could also mean that, look, the defeat is too crushing. It is both a rejection of whatever the party said and whatever message you were offering.
Whatever may be associated with Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia.
Exactly that. It would take a while to be able to extricate yourself. And that's one of the things that the NDC did very well in this campaign. You will notice that anytime they pointed out the issues and challenges under this government, they would always say the Nana Addo Bawumia government, the Nana Addo Bawumia government. So they found a way to link the two together. So it's too early to tell whether he can, one, what he would really do, and two, if he decides to throw his hat in the race again for 2028, that he would be able to make a comeback. It would also depend on who else runs, against him.
Right.
Nana Addo was given the chance 3 different times to be the party's flag bearer. But it may not necessarily mean that he would get those multiple opportunities as well. But I think time will tell.
Doc, what do you think? So do you think the NPP would give Dr. Bawumia another chance? Because Mussa Dankwah has enumerated the bits about the economy, which was baggage for him, the northern vote, which he lost massively, then the Muslim vote, which again, he lost. All these metrics or these matrices, which people felt would work for him, turned against him. Do you think the NPP would give him another chance on the back of some of the infighting we saw, and which led to Alan Chemating's, moving out a second time from the NPP, then, the whole bit about Kennedy Agyapong coming in and all of that. And how much of a comeback would also depend on the performance of the NDC?
All of that. So will they give him a second chance? They probably can. Again, depending on how they make sense of the 2024 election. Some of the sentiments you've already seen is, well, the NDC didn't win, we lost. So if that is their interpretation, then the calculus could be, how then do we get our voters back to go and vote for us with Dr. Bawumia as the candidate? They could make that calculation and say, well, let's give him another chance. But on the back of some of the things that Mussa Dankwah has also pointed out, they could look at the political landscape and say, this is not a landscape that the candidate can surmount and bring us victory. And so we would want to go in a different direction. Then they would have to look at other candidates as well. And you're right, it would also depend on the NDC's performance and the candidates that they pick. Because John Mahama only has one term, it makes the 2028 dynamics also very intriguing, right? Because we often hear this narrative about when a candidate is picked, they need time to market the candidate and get the country to know the person, etc., etc. So all of those things would shape. But it will be very interesting to see how the party processes this loss and whether they are willing, based on the lessons learned, what candidates they want to take their chances with in 2028. I mean, would the Honorable Kennedy Agyapong mount another challenge in 2028? And what are the things that he, for example, will point to undermine a case for a second chance for Dr. Bawumia?
What is your take on that? These factors that I mentioned, whether he would likely get the blessing of the NPP one more time, and the relevance of the NDC this time and its actions?
Let's look at the second chance of Bawumia. He's going to face a stiff competition from at least Kennedy. We know we've seen some flies already. Kennedy going to contest. And I think if Kennedy contests and runs against him, I think it will be more fiery than we saw in 2023.
Kennedy got about 30+% of the vote.
Nearly 40%. And without the government machinery behind you, you find it very tough. Because, see, if you look at the demography of MPP delegates, for me, that's where the answer is. The delegates of MPP is about 65% accounts. So that's where the weakness for Bawumia will come from. If the accounts begin to rally behind Kennedy because you haven't delivered enough and you'll find it very tough. Very, very, very tough. Very tough. With regards to NDC, I think...
but wait, do you think Kennedy Agyapong has that much clout? Because look at his constituency, as in Central, right? He did not contest this time. But the person he blessed, anointed, lost massively.
Maybe a lot of things happened.
And it wasn't to be expected, looking at the margins Kennedy had been getting. You think Kennedy is still that powerful in the party?
Look. There are people you speak to who are MPP, who are floating, who tell you that if it had been Kennedy, it would have been a different story. I don't think it would have won, but it wouldn't have been the way we've seen. But probably the North would have turned out a bit different. But now, what we are seeing here is that I think tactically, a candidate would have done better in Akan areas and probably maintain MP's performance level in the North, and would have expected a tighter race. And indeed, the polls were showing that when you peg Kennedy against Mahama, the gap was smaller than against Bawumia. So the signs were there. Probably people didn't take that very seriously. But this time around, I think they work with data, and they will let data drive whatever they do next.
All right. Let's do this. Let me interject. Let us, we'll be crossing over shortly to the Tessano police station, where indeed we'll be having some of that counting, collation done. We'll be crossing over shortly, not immediately, but just get ready for that. We'll take you live there. Jacqueline and Sumaya Boa will be standing by for us over there as we get the scoop on what exactly is happening, because some of the collation could not be done at the Electoral Commission centers. You know, some of these EC centers have been affected, some of them attacked and all that. And so there are issues. And for them, that is where it's going to be done, at the Tessano police station. So looking at all of these factors, it looks like it's going to be a pretty dicey affair. The Constitution in Article 66 is clear. It talks about presidents serving 2 terms and finito.
Yes.
66. 2 terms and you're done. So former President Mahama did the dying embers, not up to 2 years, did the dying embers of the Atta Mills administration, which is why he's also special, because he's going to be the first person to have taken the presidential oath 3 times. That allowed him to do the extra term, which was his first term. And now he's going to do his last term, and that is it. He can't contest anymore. They would then have to find a new candidate, whether it is Professor Jane Nano Pokwajiman or someone else to lead the party. It would be exciting to have a woman flag bearer, I mean, of one of the 2 major parties. But what do you think that could mean in our political dynamics? Before that same question for Doctor, but okay. So before you answer that question, my apologies. Sometimes we have to get a snip.
That's okay.
Let's cross over to Tessano. Jacqueline and Sumaya Boy is standing by. Jacqueline, what can you report?
Well, currently we are here at the Tessano Police Training School, where the collation of results for Nsawam Adreji is still underway. Well, yesterday my colleague James Aveji was here. He left here around 1 a.m. But the EC promised that the collation of the results would kickstart. at 6 a.m. It's currently 9 a.m. The collation is still ongoing. As you can see behind me, they've counted. If I'm not mistaken, let me say 8 so far. But then we have Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin here, to give us a fair idea of what is happening right here at the, where the collation of results is ongoing. That is for Nsawam Adreji constituency. It's still heavily guarded here. This place is heavily guarded. We've all seen the happenings or whatever thing that has been happening here on social media. But let me move closer to Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin. Now, Honorable, can you please join me here briefly? You've seen all that has been transpiring at the various collation centers. What's your take on it?
Well, let's leave the past behind us and then embrace the new system of transparency and due process. Yesterday, I noticed one thing, that our colleagues on the other side were so uncomfortable with the process. Some artificial delays, some pretenses, and something that was very striking. In the evening, when some of their leaders came here and they were telling us that, their foot soldiers were amassing outside and that we should delay the Nsawam Adreji, I said, why? So if they win, it means that we've won all the 4. And that their foot soldiers will not be happy with them. I said, why? So all of you know that Honorable Anodompe has won, and that you are only trying to frustrate him. That is not democracy. And when you talk, they want to threaten you, posting stuff on social media, with Standogbe, attacking me here and there. But me, I'm not perturbed. We are not here to fight. NPP, we don't believe in all that chaos and all. They have won the presidency, that is fine. You've won majority seats, that's fine. But the situation where you want to use some, what I would call some Takashi and Patapa to snatch seats that have been won by other constituencies of that NPP has won, that is unacceptable. They should stop the threats. They should stop misleading their people. They should stop giving certain impression to their people. and let them understand that in this politics, it's not a 100% game. You win some, you lose some. We know that all those areas that we had issues with collation, we had our data, and if there is a transparent, peaceful collation system, we would come out victorious. 2, we have commenced an audit of all other constituencies where we lost marginally, because what we realize is that some of our PCs and their collation agent were forced to leave the collation centers. But we are putting that data together. General Secretary is here with me. The Director of Elections, is at work. And very soon, we'll come out and let Ghanaians know what really went on after Dr. Bawumia had conceded. And we realize that a lot of these illegalities took place after Dr. Bawumia's concession speech, where we thought that was going to rather rally the nation around and get us together. They rather took advantage and made our people to flee various collations, and that is where they did the agenda. So we are now going into all of those. Now people are being bold with their collation sheets, their polling station pink sheets, and we are taking our time, because you see, this is a matter of figures. We just can't go publicly and talk, and then when they ask you for your figures, you don't have it. We are taking our time to look at them one by one. Where we have lost genuinely, we will not come and make noise like Dr. Bawumia did. He conceded. But where we think on the evidence available, there has been something untoward, we would petition the EC. After all, a party is entitled as of right to demand for recollation. A party is entitled to demand for recounting and all of that. All right? The law allows that. So we are going to take our time. We would want to be very meticulous. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in due process. We don't believe in attacks here and there. If indeed we follow the law, we would get a good outcome, which would benefit democracy. So I want to assure our supporters out there that we are doing all we can to ensure that the right things are done. And I would want to again call on my colleagues in the NDC that they should allow due process to take place. They have now won power. They should be mindful of their utterances. They should stop inciting the youth. They should stop the chaos, and let us all go through this process. And I also want to commend the police for what they did yesterday, ensuring that security was in place to allow us to go through this thing seamlessly. The EC officials would have to be firm. We need to all get together today to continue today's process and that of tomorrow, and Ghana will win at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Before the team left here last night, it was left with about 85 pin sheets to go. But do you think your candidate is winning?
Let me tell you something. Yesterday night, the NDC leaders were here. I don't want to mention their names. They themselves said that they know Ano has won. The NDC in Sawam constituency executives, they know that Ano Dompre has won. They told us that if the process continues and Ano is declared, their foot soldiers would kill them. I mean, to use a word, their own words. All right? My point is that if you are a leader and you cannot be bold to tell your people the bitter truth, then you are not a good leader. You get my point? Why would you deliberately frustrate a process because you think that you've lost? Look at what they did yesterday. When we were supposed to continue the collation, they said their computers were gone dead. Their batteries were low. We gave them 1 hour to charge their batteries. After 1 hour, they started deserting the place. We were supposed to do it at 1 a.m. Then they said, okay, they want to disperse their people so that we should do it. So we should do it this morning at 6 a.m. We are law-abiding. That is why we patiently follow the process up to this point. So this morning we've started. It's ongoing. We pray that today in Sawam Adwajiri get concluded, and then the Havana Southwest, Techiman South, and other constituencies that have been programmed for today, they go about their collation peacefully. I pray they come. Yesterday, some individuals were threatening. They won't come. They won't do this. It's not proper. They should come. Let's do it. Let Ghana win, and let's continue our democracy. We consider that we are in opposition. We are. All right? So we are going to regroup, re-strategize, plan, and put our house in order, and then prepare for 2028. So they have the executive power. They've won parliament. There's no problem. We are ready to move on. But they should not take our seats that we have legitimately won. That is unacceptable.
Can you confirm the seats that NPP has so far?
We would make that known at the right time.
Well, that is Honorable Alexander Fenyo Marke. We are still here at the police training school at Tessano, where the collation is still ongoing. I mean, there are still other results that would be collated. I can see here that we have Techiman South constituency, and they would also be kick-starting pretty soon. All these tables are here. And also there is another one here. Let me get closer. You also have Obuasi East constituency, and over there is the Insawam Adreji constituency, which is ongoing. Let me get closer to find out the other one, which is on this table over here. I mean, we're hoping that by midday we should get a proper lead as to who is winning in the Insawam Adreji constituency. I wish I could get a closer look, but that is another constituency. So we have 4 more, apart from the Insawam Adreji constituency, making it 5. We have 4 more other constituencies that are expected to converge here to also recollate the results from the elections. Over to you, back in the studio, Benjamin.
And that is Jacqueline Ansomaya-Bois at the police training school in Tessano, bringing us the scoop from there. And she engaged the leader of the NPP caucus, the majority leader, Alexander Afenyo Markin. And that exactly is what happened there. He makes some claims. I don't know what you think about the claims he's making. I saw you smiling in the studio. You can...
You know, these politicians, and when they speak, I think it is fair that the collation is properly done, so that the will of the people will be reflected in the elections. I don't believe in using any foul means to win any seat. I'm quite happy that this is going on. But look, the reality is not on people now, and I think the number they are expecting to get in Parliament was woefully below what they have. And look, if you look at listen to what he said, you could suggest that the concession by DMB early meant that NDC guys were able to just go to police station and then claim seats that they shouldn't have claimed. And I think that would probably be unfair to suggest that. It's not done until it's done. It doesn't matter what your candidate is saying. You must make sure that your seat is protected. If indeed MPP people did that, then that was very bad on their part.
Okay. You were making a comment before I interjected. I don't know.
Yeah, about the who emerged as NDC for 2028.
Right.
I think they should allow fair process. They should allow people to express interest to contest. They should allow free vote. No government machinery should be used to back anybody. We've seen what that could mean to them. Now, one thing about the NDC is that they are resolute when it comes to who they want to elect. Once they allow the fair process to emerge, the delegate will decide who leads them. And I think whoever is elected, people will rally behind that candidate. NDC has advantage in the sense that they don't rely on one particular ethnic group. Their fragmentation of a smaller ethnic group, the accounts are 25%, the more the banners are 18%. So you have to have unity of purpose to be able to lead them. And once they decide, I think the party will come behind that candidate.
All right. I want to run through these issues very quickly because after this we are wrapping. I don't know, but the turnout in the election and the entire results, in 2016 or so, there was a cartoon, I don't know whether you remember, with a bus and Mahama driving.
Yes.
People descending with Akufo-Addo and some. I just found that very interesting. It came to mind because it was almost prophetic. I don't know how whoever did that could have seen that this would happen, but that's just by the by. The NAPO effect. NAPO, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh.
Oh dear.
The Ashanti region was lost badly. What was his effect? I mean, you could just juxtapose that quickly with the effect of Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman in the central region. Very quick analysis for me.
I mean, from the onset, the polls were showing that NAPO would be a problem for NPP. He was solid among the core base. But these are the base that will come out anyway to vote for you. So to find somebody who would attract the base, I think was really wrong tactical move. They should have gone for somebody who would attract others. And he did not bring anybody outside the NPP base. Okay. Even in Ashanti region, the floating in Ashanti region did not like NAPO.
All right. Doc, those same bits to you, and it's a wrap. Dr. Osai Kwapong.
So on the NAPO effect, when you go back to Afrobarometer round 9, 2022, voting intentions, if you see the percentage from Ashanti region that was saying would not vote, and then even with the global info analytic polls around the regional breakdowns in terms of potential voter apathy, especially in the Ashanti region, if you look at Professor Smart Sapong's baseline poll in June, when NAPO was nominated to be vice president, my read at that point was that, okay, this is a good political move because if you see the warning signs from the Ashanti region, perhaps if the number 2 slot on the ticket comes from the region, it would be appeasing to them, that it would help energize the base. But, you know, in retrospect, it looks like it didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to pan out. As Mussa Dankwah said, it had to be someone more than just, who excites more than just the core of those who would have voted for him anyway. But I honestly thought it was going to, help whatever initial signs of apathy was being seen in the Ashanti region. As to who emerges presidential candidate for the NDC, very interesting to see. One, it will be very interesting to see whether Prof is interested in running in 2028, and also what other candidates would emerge as being interested. And I think we'll just have to wait for
She's 72 now. In 2028, she'll be 76.
Fair point, but again, it doesn't preclude her from, that is if she is something she's interested in. So for me, we would have to wait for time to sort all of that out. Except that, because JDM only has 1 term, I'm sure it's something they would want to quickly, get a sense of, so there's enough time to begin to market that candidate. I mean, if they had 2 terms, you have a lot more time in the event that you are not able to retain your first term, or unseat an incumbent, then you still have time to market the candidate. But the dynamics is different now, so I'm sure it's something they would want to resolve quickly. So they have enough time to market that candidate.
I had to acknowledge this comment. There's no time for reaction, but he says, good morning, I love your morning shows. Just to contribute to the show, I think the impact of free SHS is more on the parents than the students. The reality is different. The person is trying to say that the students who went to vote may not have seen it, but the parents, some of the parents would have seen it as such. I'm so grateful, gentlemen. Mussa Dankwah, Executive Director, Global Info Analytics. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. And congratulations for getting it right this time. For getting it right, pretty much. And we also had Dr. John Osai Kwapong, a CDD fellow. Doc, yedasi bebre.
Asideni hokra anytime.
All right. Stay with us. After the break, we'll serve you something interesting. In a surprising turn of events, the presidential and parliamentary elections proceeded peacefully in the Boku Central constituency. And we say surprisingly, not lightly. That's in the Upper East region, contrary to many expectations that there would be violence due to the long-standing chieftaincy conflict there. Now, this calm came as a relief to residents election observers, and Ghanaians as a whole. Our Upper East Regional Correspondent, Albert Sori, covered the electoral process in that volatile area and came through with a special report, taking us with him on his journey to and from Boku. After this, I'll be serving you my blunt thoughts on the AM show. But for now, let's head to Boku with Albert Sori.
As a journalist covering the 2024 election in the Boku Central constituency, I faced firsthand the tension that still lingers there. On the eve of the election, in the company of a fellow journalist, I joined local voters in seeking police escort to ensure safe passage into the volatile area which has been engulfed in an inter-ethnic chieftaincy conflict for decades now. At the regional police headquarters in Bolgatanga, I found many voters stranded, unable to find buses willing to make the journey due to safety concerns and the rigorous screening processes the security agencies had to take them through.
We took it upon ourselves to do this organization. And now because of the security situation, they need to search your bags and then search your wares before you can now load them in the truck. So Bolga has become the conversion point for all natives of Boku Township who are going to Boku, for everything to be searched before you can board. And now due to that security situation too, most of the buses or the market trucks are not willing to go.
But they arrived in Boku less than 1 hour before the curfew time of 6 p.m. and proceeded to the police station where the officers were to report to duty. We were introduced to officers here who assured us that driving to our hotel was safe. Nothing in the Boku town was unusual as we drove to the hotel. Curfew time was fast approaching, but the streets were still busy with the movement of people. We took the chance to gauge the mood ahead of the elections the next day by speaking to a few youths in the town.
We want a peaceful election. The fact that Boku is not stable, there's tension in town, and then this evening we saw a lot of military men inside. They came to town, so I'm sure with that the town will be stable for us to vote.
Though there is a security threat, so due to one or two reasons, but upon all that, people will definitely come out their numbers to vote. Because looking at 3 days today, the situation is now a bit calm.
We then proceeded to our hotel just in time for the curfew hour. It is believed that the factions in the Boku conflict are aligned with the NPP and NDC, and so there were rumors that they may try to scare each other ahead of election day by firing guns at night. But none of this happened. The town was quiet throughout the night. The morning of election day, between 6 and 7 a.m., we arrive at the Boku Municipal Assembly where the office of the Electoral Commission is located. Electoral Commission officials were busy transporting ballot boxes and other election materials to various polling stations. The Deputy Constituency Returning Officer, Hassan Dan, told Joy News that the transportation of the election materials had begun the previous night.
Yesterday, the distance places, that is where our challenge is, Mognori and then Misga. So we have deployed those ones yesterday in the night. We met the security on 3 occasions. We told them that listen, if we don't deploy early, then we are likely to start late. And so that exception is given to us as we are in the EC jackets, then that exception is given to us. So we have also told our officials that they should make sure that at least the jackets will be with them. That will be at least a pass for the curfew.
We proceeded to visit some polling stations. Of course, conscious of the volatile security situation here in Boku. To move about in Boku, journalists like myself must know a few things about the conflict dynamics in this town. First, as long as you do not belong to any of the factions in the conflict and do not interfere or take sides in it, you will not be a target. Also, the town is demarcated into territories belonging to each faction in the conflict. A journalist must know these territories and have a good relationship with the people. And last but not least, each faction has fighters and people watching the streets for their enemies or suspicious persons entering their territory. So security agencies advise that as a stranger, you should drive with your windows open at all times so you can easily be seen by anyone watching from a distance. This keeps you safe as you will not be mistaken for someone else and get shot at or attacked. With all this in mind and our vehicle branded, we moved about the entire town without any problems. Before 8 a.m., we sighted more voters arriving from Bolgatanga in buses, escorted by the military. The transportation of election materials to some polling stations here in the Boku constituency had delayed mainly due to the security protocols involved. Therefore, voting started a bit late at some of the polling stations. At the Methodist Primary School polling station, we met voters in a queue, but no Electoral Commission officials were present at almost 9 a.m. We were told that the EC officials had set up for voting to begin, but were instructed by an unknown person to pack up and go to the Boku prisons nearby for qualified prisoners to cast their votes first. This angered the waiting voters at this polling station.
Yeah, they set everything. They move it into the prisons for the prisoners to exercise their franchise. But we have thought they should have used something, some method different. By bringing the prisoners out to vote, that one should have been. The people here are more than the 18 prisoners inside. So it's making everybody frustrated.
And I think it's not well planned. If it is well planned, at least they should have known what to do. I was here as early as 5 a.m., but I was much disappointed. As we speak now, no any EC officials here. We don't even know what is happening.
Later, the EC officials returned. The returning officer for this polling station, Dasmani Ayoma, explained why they temporarily left.
You know, the prison is just closer to this, our station. So we're called that we have to move to the prison yard for them to finish voting before we come here to continue those that are here. Yes, I was instructed by EC, and that's why we did so. Yeah, there were 17 of them.
Voting subsequently began here, and we proceeded to monitor the elections across polling stations in the Boku Central constituency. It was peaceful everywhere we visited. No challenges or disagreements whatsoever. At about 11 a.m., we met the parliamentary candidate for the NPP, Paul Agobere Alale, who had just finished casting his vote at the Kokazule Primary School polling station.
And it's peaceful. And I know across the other areas it's the same, because I have not received any report from any of the polling stations that there's some misunderstanding or whatever it is. So my hope is that by the end of the day, the declaration will be peaceful and Boku will move forward.
As the polls drew closer to an end at 5 p.m., one thing was also on our minds: the curfew which was still in place in Boku beginning at 6 p.m. The protocols put in place were that at 5 p.m., voters in queues would still be allowed to vote, and by 6 p.m., which is the curfew time, if there were still voters in queues, the security personnel would provide protection for them to vote and go home. All other civilians were to go indoors at 6 p.m. However, persons who had accreditation to monitor or supervise the elections, such as the EC officials, polling station agents, the media, and other election observers, could stay and observe the counting of ballots at the polling stations, again under the protection of the security personnel. We observed counting at the Old Court polling station.
63, 64, 65, 66.
This went on until about 7 p.m. and we decided to go and wait at the Boku Divisional Police Station, where we had been informed the Constituency Results Collation Center would be. Upon getting there, we were told to instead go to the office of the Electoral Commission located at the Boku Municipal Assembly.
Voting has ended here in Boku Central Constituency, and it's also curfew hours. We were initially told that the collation center was supposed to be at the police station. Now we are being told to move to the office of the Electoral Commission, which is located at the Boku Municipal Assembly. You see that some Electoral Commission officials in the company of security are going there. So we are just joining them to that place.
We arrived there at about 8 p.m. and met EC officials protected by security personnel arriving with ballot boxes from various polling stations. Later, we learned that the ballot boxes were only to be received here before the results pink sheets were taken to the police station where the collation was to be done. Therefore, at about 10 p.m., we returned to the Boku Divisional Police Station. The collation of results was done in a hall inside the station with some police officers present.
NPP 131, CPP 2, NDC 71.
The process took all night, so we spent the night here. The next morning, the collation of election results for the Boku Central constituency continued until about 9 a.m. The Electoral Commission officials were ready to declare the election results. First, the presidential results.
Mahmoud Bawumia, he had 13,384 valid votes. Daniel Augustus Latte Jr., he had 38 votes. Christiana Kobina Andrew, 26 votes. Kofi Akpalu, 17 votes. Mohamed Frimpong, 7 votes. Nana Akosia Frimpoma, 58 votes. John Dramani Mahama, 26,993 votes. Hassan Abdullahi Ayarga, 213 votes. Kofi Corentin, 6 votes. George Tum Barima Adu, 12 votes. Nana Kwame Bediako, 10 votes. Alan Kojo Kirimantin, 39 votes.
And then the parliamentary election results.
We have NPP Paul Gobre Alali having 3,855 votes. Mahama Yarga of NDC, 25,350. Anaba Emmanuel of APC, he had 308 votes. The total valid votes is 29,513. Total rejected ballots is 6,277. Total vote cast 35,790. By the results announced, I hereby declare Honorable Mahama Ayarga as the MP-elect for Boku Central constituency of the 2024 general presidential and parliamentary election. Thank you.
The NDC's parliamentary candidate, Mahama Ayariga, won by a landslide to serve another term as the Member of Parliament for the Boku Central constituency of the Upper East region. This will be his 5th term and 4th time consecutively. He was happy about the peaceful nature of the elections here in Boku Central, despite the initial fears that there could be chaos.
Indeed, a few days to this election, there were many who did not believe that elections would be held in Boku Central constituency. But the staff of the EC have proven that even they can do the impossible. So we want to thank them very much for what they have achieved. And again, let me thank the members of the security agencies here, led by the divisional police commander, Mr. Adamu Seidu. Very important has been the role of the Ghana Armed Forces. Indeed, they have proven that they are the Ghana Armed Forces. And they have made sure that Boku Central's election has been the most peaceful in Ghana, contrary to speculations. So I want to salute the Northern Command, led by Brigadier General Tay, and his able assistants. They've done a wonderful job, the Ghana Armed Forces, and we in Boku are very, very grateful to them.
We waited for some time to be sure there were no threats of violence after the declaration of the election results. When we were assured it was safe, we made our journey back home to Bolgatanga, the streets of Boku, peaceful with sights of a few supporters of the NDC jubilating. Reporting for Joy News, Albert Sorry, Boku Central Constituency.
Welcome back, and as you see me with the screen, you know it's time for my blunt thoughts. Today we're bringing it as the last segment for the day. And I've titled it Fallout from Election 2024, My Chief Takeaways. Fallout from Election 2024, My Chief Takeaways. But let me start from here. You see, Frank Anodompre has called for the halt of the transitional process. And as a lawmaker, I feel saying something like that flies in the very face of the law as it is written in black and white. How do some of these characters end up in Parliament? And here we should blame ourselves as the voters for voting some such people who put party over nation into Parliament. It's not to say that if he feels aggrieved, he knows the process. Go to court, the High Court, get the collations done. But to say the transitional process should be halted, who does that? But one of the takeaways, and I just want to go to this slide, Bright Simmons interacted with me in the course of the elections, and he had this to say. It was very clear to me by 2020 that we had one of the most tone-deaf administrations that this country has ever seen, and I have almost 20 years of experience observing governments. Refusal to listen. It's a lesson for everybody. But let's come to David Ofochudote and what he had to say in terms of his three big lessons. There are three interesting things, and I want all of them so that I can just quickly go through them. Never assume those you defeated can never defeat you in the future. That's also a lesson for the NDC too. It's also a lesson for the NDC. Keep it in mind. You lost gargantuanly, you are back winning massively. Don't take it for granted. 2, remember those who sang hallelujah later chanted, crucify him. Crucify him. We will do it to you. And finally, the greater the margin of victory, the higher the people's expectations. For unto whom much is given, much is expected. You see, and that is why I find it funny, almost laughable. These claims about 2 million NPP voters didn't vote. It is absolute rubbish. Who is your voter? You don't own anybody. You must do the right things. Ghanaians have become very allergic to nonsense. Apart from your core base, no one is your voter that you can claim. And these floaters are some disgruntled followers of your party. It will destroy you if you fail. If the NDC also messes up, even worse will happen to them. Fact. If, however, they satisfy Ghanaians, Ghanaians will show them their appreciation. Bottom line. Another reflection. Some politicians seem to think choosing communicators who can spin, lie, shout will win them elections. That time is past. These loudmouths they think can shout them to victory. I shall tell such politicians the truth. At best, all these characters will achieve is piss, and I'm intentionally not using peeve. I'm using piss ordinary Ghanaians the heck off. But I guess those politicians won't listen, will they now? That's another lesson. You see, a win is by your deeds, not by last-minute project launches or by going to all constituencies. The vice president touted the fact that he had been to all 276. People were mentioning it. Why did he lose so badly? If you do the right thing, it will speak for you. It's not crisscrossing the entirety of the country that will win you an election. One of my main lessons, when I said, me, personally, I feel Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was my worst president in the Fourth Republic, and possibly since independence, some people came after me. NPP stalwarts felt the sting and said the opposite. They said he was the best thing since sliced bread. But let me ask, if he was, is this how Ghanaians treat their best? Is this how they treat his anointed one, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, by giving him a political bludgeoning, a political shellacking, only rivaled by the Nkrumah and Rawlings eras in terms of votes? This should also teach politicians a great lesson. God is not mocked. God's people are not to be taken for granted. As you sow, so you shall reap. The low voter turnout, you see, when people are tired, it is what it is. But it's another problem. We had about 239,000 rejected ballots. I think it's something that we really, as a country, ought to look at because it could determine an election. That is too wide. 239,000. What was the win in time back then when Atta Mills became president? Less than 40,000 thereabouts. So 239,000, that's a lot. But I also have a message for the EC. The convoluted processes and delays in declaring winners because of that regional collation impediment, that layer and its redundancy, so to speak. I think as of now, we should be able to accept that it may have not been necessary. The EC itself had piled pressure on its own back by touting its so-called system, which could have voting done in a certain space of time and results ready for declaration after that. Talk is cheap. Let's do what must be done, and we shall all be free. But that said, the Electoral Commission has acquitted of itself fairly well, and we must doff our hats to them. We must give them their flowers. When you criticize, you must also consider the right things the person has done. And if you consider the smoothness of the process in most parts of the country, and its consistent press conferences and explainers to the Ghanaian populace, you have to salute the Electoral Commission led by Jean Mensa. I have my personal issues with her about some of how she conducted herself. But in that regard, congratulations to you, madam. Now, on the bit about looting, distraction, it's incredibly sad and wrong, but we must resolve this for all parties now. I propose the next time there are elections and political parties are paying for adverts from platforms like ours, they also pay for adverts satisfying or sensitizing their supporters that if they win, they should not engage in these acts of savagery. I have, however, heard of incidents where some DCs, etc., and their relatives were trying to stash some stuff, hide some state assets for themselves. Of course, if you've lost and you think you can hide certain things that belong to the state, for that, the police should have been tipped off And if they were not forthcoming, ordinary citizens, after all, you can conduct a citizen's arrest, depending on the circumstances. Stopping that heinous crime was valid. If it is state property belonging to you and me, not them, we should take stock of that. But mind you, this is not the first time this is happening. We need a solution that is general. We saw 2016. We're seeing 2024. We must find solutions that last and not be partisan about this issue. Followers or fans of political parties must also realize that their actions, if criminal, will not be spared. You cannot take the law into your own hands because your party has won and think that you will be shielded. In the end, the leaders we select are for Ghana, not a political party or its followers. In any case, some of those who on this occasion voted for the NDC would have voted for the NPP in the past. So we ought to be careful, tread cautiously on that one. But then I must talk about chiefs involving themselves in partisan politics against the Constitution, both for the NDC and for the NPP. To such chiefs, I ask, I pity them. Some have enjoyed in the past and even now. Others may enjoy in the near future. But how do we unravel this mess? This nonsense must stop. I call it nonsense, yes. We are headed for disaster if we continue like that. In fact, those chiefs should learn a bitter lesson. If you look at the voting pattern, especially in the areas where some of these chiefs were notorious for blessing candidates as ordained by God. I didn't know the chiefs had also become like some of our self-proclaimed prophets. You would see that the people did not reflect what the chiefs wanted them to. That should tell them something if they are thinking. Your endorsement of a candidate as a chief that does nothing to shape the minds of your people. They can think for themselves, but it does a whole lot to endanger you, your family, and even your people if you happen to get a vindictive leader who can say he wouldn't develop certain places because people didn't vote a certain way. Then whom would you have to blame? You, the chief. Whom would you blame? But as I address chiefs, I cannot address them without addressing some of these false men and women of the cloth who have made using God's name in vain their stock in trade. Yes, I said false. God does not lie. Read his word. Read what he said to Elijah, to Jeremiah and the rest. Jesus himself, that his word would never fall to the ground. If they come and say these things that do not come to pass, they are quacks, charlatans, frauds. Call them out for what they are. I heard one of them in church preaching and saying that, oh, and come the 7th of December, by the end of the day, wearing a shawl and that, prophesying that by the end of that day, Ghanaians would realize that, in fact, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia would be the leader of the country. You see, for such people, I have a message. Let me go to my next slide. The Bible says, what about you? You call yourself a Jew. You depend on the law and boast about God. You know what God wants you to do, and you have learned from the law to choose what is right. You are sure that you are a guide for the blind, a light for those who are in darkness, an instructor for the foolish, and a teacher for the ignorant. You are certain that in the law you have the full content of knowledge and of truth. But it goes on. What about you? You call yourself, shall we go to the next slide, please? What about you? I need the next slide. Okay. So we'll get to that next slide because there's a portion that follows this one. There's a portion before this one that I want to get to, and it continues that quote, not necessarily this one. It asks, what about you? Because of you, because of the things you say, because of the things you do, people speak ill of God because of you. And because of such liars, people speak ill of God. My anger here is that such liars, such dubious characters, and what they do, in fact, affects how some gullible people take God for granted because of their vile actions. And that is what is pointed out to here. If you go to that last slide, which I'll finally do now, Galatians 6 verse 7, it says, do not deceive yourselves. No one makes a fool of God. You will reap exactly what you plant. These religious leaders should stop these things about predictions. They should stop them. Let's continue to other matters so that we conclude on this conversation. Now, there's also the very vexed and worrisome matter of people saying other people should do certain things to them or that they would do certain things to themselves or take certain actions if some candidate wins or another loses. Why? Do you know the future? Are you God? Do you know when you will die? Do you know what will happen to you tomorrow? If you don't know these, why attempt playing God and endangering yourself, your life? People were saying, oh, if this person loses, if that person wins, I will set myself ablaze. Who sent you? Why can't you just go and vote in peace for the person you want and let things be? Now, there are those who are calling on the media to be more firm and asking that this and that of the incoming administration. No problem with holding them accountable. We will hold them accountable. But as you say these things, you should also not be a hypocrite. In fact, if yesterday you were not criticizing and today all of a sudden you want to criticize, that is not being right. That is not being level-headed. My problem with such quick calls is the hypocrisy of it. Where were some of these people when the current government, like a plague, was ravaging our water bodies, scourging the people with taxes, flaying us with all of the other things we've seen? Where were they? So where from this newfound voice? I'm not saying don't hold this. I will be at the forefront of holding this government accountable. The new one, the incoming one. But in the past, what happened? You must be level in your approach. Now, to conclude, I think you have to be careful what you ask for. That's one lesson I've learned from this. You know why? Because I remember the vice president saying he wanted a big gap between him and Mahama, and that people should pour out to vote. You should be careful what you ask for, because the big gap came, but in reverse. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. These are some pearls of wisdom, lessons I took from election 2024, which I've served you in my blunt thoughts. Thank you for watching. May God bless Ghana and make her great and strong.